across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome to the show. Very much appreciate you joining me. Lots to talk about, as there always is. It's pressed just hitting 3 minutes past 10 o'clock, and this is Talk, the home of common sense, obviously. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Don't forget, use your nag. If you miss anything from the show, and if you haven't already, do subscribe to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about Kowtow Kier over there, meeting Xi Jinping in China. What have we actually got for that? Really? What have we got? Anyone? Tumbleweed. Tumbleweed, yeah? Well, we'll be talking about that. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Also, the government delaying any overhaul of the welfare system. What a surprise. The assisted dying bill looks like that's going to die a death because it's basically being talked out in the House of Lords. And if there's someone who's in favour of assisted dying, I think that's probably a very, very good thing. Plus, the convicted terrorist who's going to stand as a pro-Gaza candidate in the local council election. And guess where? Oh, you won't guess it. Yeah. Birmingham, of course, you guessed it. The world's mad. The world. Oh, and don't send children who are suspended from school home. That's the other latest madness for a bunch of people who don't want any of your kids to get an education. I do want to hear from you today on any and all of the topics. You know the rules. You set the agenda on the phones. What you want to call about is what we'll take the calls on. But specifically, I would like to know about biggest story, supposedly this historic trip of the Prime Minister's to China. I don't get how the first trip in the last 8 years is a historic. I don't think journalists who are with the Prime Minister understand the actual meaning of the word historic. It's not a historic trip. It's not like a massive big part of history. He's not an historic figure. That word is simply, basically, government propaganda. Frankly, the Chinese media would be proud to be as big propagandists for this government as the media travelling with the Prime Minister on his plane. But he's been defending cozying up to China's communist dictator Xi Jinping amid spying claims here, giving away the Chinese embassy property in the heart of London, the brutal crackdown in Hong Kong, Jimmy Lai facing life behind bars. We're going to be talking to his son a little bit later in the show. Slave labour in the Uyghur camps, you name it. No, absolutely have to go there and do a trade deal for the British people. We ain't got a trade deal. As far as I can tell, we've got absolutely nothing in return. So what's your reaction to that? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. All together now. Text cost one, standard network rate message. Joining me for the chat today, and I always say this when you're here with us on a Thursday, so useful to have you in on a day like this. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. He knows his potatoes. He really does. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Knowing my potatoes, is that a racial slur because I come from Ireland?
Probably. I'm half Irish. I can do that.
Yeah,
I can
exactly.
do that.
You can get away with it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't mind at all.
Them's the rules. Them's the rules, folks. I mean, in the last 10 minutes, the rules may have changed. That's what they do these days. But
well,
listen,
I can just be offended, and then the rules will just do what I want.
You could probably have, what was it, rejection sensitivity like that?
Of course.
That woman who got
where's the HR
12
for?
grand. 12 grand for someone telling you to get back in your box.
Is that it?
I mean, God, yeah. I worked at a newspaper. I was called the C word before 5:30 every single day of the year. I mean, I must be a millionaire by now. This bit of rejection sensitivity. What a load. Anyway, he's not sensitive at all. Let's talk about this utter nonsense of this trip. Not historic. For God's sake, can political journalists get a sodding dictionary?
Sorry, I disagree. For the Labour Party, it's historic because they don't get people into power that often, and therefore he's going to be held in the accolades of Labour for the next.
I'll give you that one. But this so-called historic trip to China, Keir Starmer goes on Tuesday night deliberately, so he doesn't have to do PMQs on Wednesday. Who'd be kidding? Yes. He then has a whole day off, effectively. So overnight, while we were all happily dreaming of not being Keir Starmer, no doubt his wife very much enjoying him being away, let's be honest. Conversations at the breakfast table this morning, much improved. He had a meeting with Xi Jinping. Individually, the most powerful man in the world, doesn't have to worry with this democracy malarkey. Second biggest economy, second best military in the world, and as I say, not going to be voted out of office because he's completely cemented his role. At the last rival gone. They were supposed to have a 40-minute meeting He went all the way to Beijing for a 40-minute meeting with this bloke. And, oh, no, but it was a great success, everybody, because it lasted, a whole hour and 20 minutes. I mean, I'm sorry, I've spent longer talking to the woman doing my pedicure. This is absurd.
But he also has to talk through an interpreter. So, that 40 minutes, that's half the time gone.
But this is an insult. Now, we know, like the German Chancellor, Macron do any foreign trip going. They've all been 3 or 4 times. Mark Carney's been there. Mark Carney's been there. I mean, they all have a foreign trip. We have to deal with this country. It doesn't matter how horrible it is. We don't get to choose their leaders. We have a lot of trade with them. When I say we have a lot of trade, we buy a lot of their stuff. Yeah. But after the revelations about spying, even on, the Prime Minister's closest aides, Liz Truss, former Prime Minister, in the studio, in that chair, this time yesterday, saying, basically she couldn't rule out whether or not her own phone was actually hacked. I'm pretty sure we know that it was.
No, she has been told it was.
It was.
As was Boris's, as was Keir Starmer's before.
Those leaders' phones were taken away from them. I think we know that's why. We've got this mega embassy giveaway. We've got some nonsense about this border security agreement with China, where could you please stop selling all the engines that are used in the boats, in the motors in the boats that are bringing people over the channel, which is a load of nonsense.
It's not going to happen.
None of this is going to happen. No. This is a national humiliation by Kowtow Keir, isn't it?
Oh, Kowtow, two-tier, never hear, don't care. Yes. It's Starmer. Yes, it is a national humiliation. And the important things like Jimmy Lai, a British citizen being held in a Chinese prison for exercising what would be a normal democratic right. And
we know Keir Starmer doesn't like that. He doesn't like protesters.
Well, and he doesn't like democratic rights. He wants to prosecute people, but that's a different matter for doing it. But Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong, we have let China forget about the international agreement that we had on the handover of Hong Kong and just run roughshod all over us. No, it's appalling. We do have to do business with China because we're the 6th largest economy in the world. They're the 2nd largest economy in the world. We're both permanent members.
By a long way bigger than ours.
Yeah, but we're both permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations. We're both nuclear powers as well. So we have to, at a certain level, you recognise that it is right and appropriate that Keir Starmer goes there. But we
have to. That's the real world.
Yes, but there's an awful lot that he needs to do, and this, to go for a 90-minute meeting, for goodness sake.
80, don't exaggerate it.
Well, I was, because it's historic. I have to exaggerate.
Did genuinely 80? No, it was no 1 hour 20, 60, 80. No, definitely 80 minutes.
Definitely 80 minutes.
Come on, guys, come up with a new nickname for him, because we got, you say Kowtow Keir, never hear.
Kowtow Keir, two-tier, never hear, don't care.
No, but there must be. I genuinely. It's genuinely embarrassing. We've got the spying in the UK here. We've got the hacking of the phones. We've got, as you say, Jimmy Lai, who's a British citizen.
He's a British citizen.
He's a British. He was originally born in China. He escaped to Hong Kong. Built an amazing life, pro-democracy activist, but also very leading businessman, owned the biggest newspaper out there. He's a serious player, incredibly impressive man. But it's life on the line. And we're going to be talking to his son at midday. But we've got the Uyghur people, we've got the human rights abuses, we've got slave labour camps which are making a lot of the solar panels and wind turbines.
We've got our intellectual property being stolen.
Yeah, industrial espionage on an industrial scale. We've got on this. Kemi Badenoch was right to really that she wouldn't be doing this trip at this time right now. But the only point would be, and he's been justifying it, but it's about the British people, British trade, and they talked about they've made real progress. So look at real progress on tariffs for whiskey. We are looking at how they're to be reduced on visa-free travel. This is for the British citizens to go to China. Big demand for that. Yeah, visa-free travel to help them make more money from British tourists. How far, how much, and when that can start. On the information exchange on small boats, the cooperation that we need within a dialogue, actually, about greater strategic focus on security and defence. So a very good, constructive meeting with real outcomes. The relationship is in a good place, a strong place. That's what he told broadcasters this morning. What a load of abject nothing nonsense.
You know what that says to me? Because before these meetings go on, there's a huge amount of effort put in out of the embassy and diplomats talking to diplomats. And
the businesses that are with him will have been doing the deals that are to be announced today.
Getting all of this sorted out so that whenever the leaders meet, they make decisions. they don't. The decisions aren't we're going to talk about this or we're going to try and examine this or anything else. That means they have failed to make decisions. And if they haven't done it through all the diplomacy that's going on beforehand, the leaders getting together is not going to make a jot of difference. This is a complete and utter waste of time.
A complete and utter. But don't worry, Xi Jinping got a football that was used in the Arsenal-Man United match.
Oh, wonderful. He's a Liverpool fan.
That was probably an historic match as well. I don't know. There's a lot of football on in my home. I don't know. I'm genuinely, I'm appalled. I can live with the realpolitik. I think we should deal with the real world. But this is just genuinely humiliating for our nation.
It is.
And once again, Keir Starmer trying to dodge dealing with stuff at home by being abroad and not dealing with anything abroad either. It's just an embarrassment.
I'm heartened by the fact that they took burner phones with them, and I hope that
apparently they always do that. Liz Truss told us.
Yes, they should do that. Boris apparently didn't.
No, because he's unreliable.
But on this case, they took a burner aircraft with them because they couldn't trust an RAF aircraft not to be interfered with because they couldn't guard it all of the time. So that's why it didn't go in Boris Force One. They went in a hired British Airways aircraft. But if you've got all of that
how would that be safer?
Well, because it goes back into the commercial environment. It's not used for flying government
so they would
ministers around all the time.
But again, why can't they guard it all the time? This is pathetic if they can't do it. Is it true that they take a tent for the Prime Minister to have in his aides, to put up in a little mini pop-up tent to have in their bedroom so that they can get changed in and out of their PJs and their smart clothes without anyone? They do. Isn't that extra? Here's the thing: if you're going to a country like that, maybe they're not friends.
Oh no!
Also, seriously, China, can we talk about this? You do a lot of really, really awful things, but wanting to see Keir Starmer naked is probably the worst.
Oh, I don't know. Think of the compromat if they threaten to put that up on OnlyFriends.
No one would want to see it.
Oh, you've got 18% of the population still support the Labour Party. There's 18% of the population might want to subscribe to that Keir Starmer changing in China OnlyFans.
Can we go to an early break? I feel sick. I actually feel nauseous. I didn't think this was where the show was going to go this morning, but there we are.
Well, it's your fault for implanting that vision in my mind.
We've all got that now. We've all got that picture now.
You brought that up.
Make it stop. Make it stop. Let's talk about something else. Donald Trump, does that help? I don't know. The compliment on him.
He takes a tent as well, so that's
definitely chilling. Well, he takes a tent for his spray tan. That's different. Chilling threat to Iran yesterday. Whenever he puts something out on his True Social website, and he puts it out with "Thank you for your attention to this matter," that usually means it's pay attention to this.
Yes.
But he usually, people are calling it a chilling threat to Iran. Basically, make a nuclear deal or face an overwhelming military onslaught. Now, no talk about help for the people who have been slaughtered in their tens of thousands. 30,000 seems to be the minimum number that we can possibly think. Young people going out simply asking to have basic civil rights and freedoms, sort that we, by the way, used to take for granted in this country. But talking about his beautiful armada of warships ready to attack. He's talking about the nuclear threat, a nuclear deal, taking them out. But he's not talking about helping the people that he said, go out on the streets and we will help you. We will not allow China to crack down. I'm sorry, he's failed these people. He made a promise he shouldn't have made, or if he made a promise he should have kept.
He made a promise he shouldn't have made. But going after he's got three options here. You build on what he's done already in destroying Iran's nuclear capability. They haven't reined back and they're still going forward. So go and deal with that. But in doing that, that's sending a clear message to the regime that we can attack the IRGC. If need to, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps.
Do it then.
And we can attack the leadership. He's then got the ability to escalate and try and set the conditions for things to calm down.
But the key thing is having that armada there. It's not just one big aircraft carrier, which is, by the way, the size of a city. Yeah. It's a huge number of boats alongside
it is, but you don't really need that. That's demonstration.
Isn't that about protecting the allies?
It is, but it's also about flag waving and I probably can't say this now, but so I won't. Willy waving.
Okay, you can absolutely say.
He what he's saying is, I've got something bigger than yours. And if you look at the previous attacks on the Iranian nuclear facilities, most of those were carried out from continental United States or from the United Kingdom, and the Iranians couldn't see them coming. And there was some pre-position capability in the Middle East. He's put an awful lot more in the Middle East, so he's ramping up the pressure. The difficulty with any military option to try and assist any overthrow of the government is what happens next.
Yeah, that's always, and again, we've seen that again and again. But again, is there an opposition in waiting? Is there? There's a lot to be said for, the same for Afghanistan, Iraq, and other countries. You know what? If you're a threat to us, Iran has made clear, absolute threats to America. They have every right, as far as I'm concerned, to take out that regime. No issue with that whatsoever, and it'd be good for the Iranian people.
And for the rest of the world.
And then basically say, but it's not our problem what happens afterwards. But of course, it has a habit of becoming our problem. I mean,
like Iraq,
the lefties,
Libya,
but the lefties. Well, so we didn't get involved in Syria, and Syria also became our problem.
Yeah.
But this is the thing: the lefties will be there saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, President." It's like, get with the real program. Let's also talk about Keir Starmer once again. When he was a barrister, calling for the European Convention on Human Rights, writing in I can see the anger already, in a book that was basically put together by Phil Shiner, who was a completely and utterly disgraced, lost his solicitor, basically committed fraud, has lost his right to practice, and basically was getting dodgy evidence from Iraq to prosecute British veterans in Iraq.
Making it up.
Literally making it up, and basically he was ambulance chasing and making money. But Keir Starmer, we know, was involved in a case with him. That was on the front page of the Telegraph yesterday, but also as a barrister, produced a chapter for this book which basically called for the European Convention on Human Rights to be used to investigate British troops. This man does not like British soldiers.
What has happened with this story is it's showing Keir Starmer's true character. It's showing his underlying beliefs, his foundation that everything is built on. And his foundation is not supporting the state, it's attacking the state. It's using rules that were not designed for what he's using them for, that come from organisations that are not under the control of the legislature in this country to deal with what this country is doing. He is happy to see our troops being prosecuted, but of course we have to remember that he comes from a political party that's happy to give on-the-run letters and immunity effectively to terrorists that are attacking them. And
the whole point of the Good Friday Agreement was it was supposed to be even-handed, whether you were paramilitary on whichever side, or whether you were the soldiers. Basically we would draw a line. No more prosecutions unless there were very specific crimes.
It drew a line for the terrorist organisations. It did not draw a line for the security forces. Now, as a former soldier, if I will say this quite happily, if any person in the military or the security forces has committed a crime, they should be prosecuted and feel the full force of the law. But it should be done in a fair way that's equal to what's going on with everyone else. Nobody should get away with criminal behaviour.
And they shouldn't be held to a higher standard than anybody else.
No, and it shouldn't be 20, 30, 40, even the statute of limitations that allows it 50 years later.
But also there's triple jeopardy. I mean, we have a law here, in Britain, unless there's amazing new evidence, that you cannot be tried for the same crime. But we're talking about soldiers facing, 3 different investigations after being found innocent.
And it's ridiculous. And what Keir Starmer, if you examine some of the detail, what Keir Starmer's done is, where investigations have happened, where court cases have happened, has found what he has been able to argue is a flaw in the process under European Human Rights Convention to then turn around and nullify what was going on and lead it to another trial. And what that does is it takes the individual, and the pressure that's on them is immense. And we've seen the veterans that have been subject to this say that it's put them to the edge of suicide. I know it's put some other veterans over suicide, and we know that stress causes cancer and other conditions, and that's why some of the veterans have died early.
Certainly exacerbates them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just so appalling. And again, I think we kind of already knew that about him.
But this is unforgivable. This is completely unforgivable. Nobody in who's been a veteran or nobody who's in the military, I don't understand how any of them could ever vote for anything that he's associated with.
Well, it's interesting though, with veterans basically after that big Reform for Veterans event, which then became the Swiller Braverman defection event earlier in the week. Veterans saying, look, but don't use us for votes. I mean, this should be a non-party political issue. This is a right and wrong issue. It should be non-party political.
It should be non-party political. And the Veterans for Reform bit, every party tries to do something for veterans, and the big beef was against Nigel Farage, and Nigel is Marmite. You either love him or you hate him, and it's the same with veterans, it's the same with everyone else. And you shouldn't start to use issues that are apolitical for political purposes.
Yep.
The trouble is all parties do it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Just finally in this section, I also want to talk about the assisted dying bill. Lord Faulkner, who's the former Labour minister who has been pushing through this legislation in the House of Lords after it was introduced by Kim Leadbeater, a backbench Labour MP in the House of Commons and passed in the House of Commons. The assisted dying bill, he says, has no hope of passing unless there's a change in approach by the Lords. Now, basically, lots of unhappiness, even among people who voted for this, MPs who voted for this law, or this bill, which of course is a private member's bill that's been given government time. And there's a lot of evidence now that the government was planning to have this done, but it wasn't in their manifesto, and therefore, you know, bring it in a private member's bill from a loyal MP, wink, wink, and get it through that way. But basically, it goes through a lot of disquiet over the committee stage and the extraordinarily biased and one-sided evidence and evidentiary hearings and the witnesses who are allowed to give evidence on this issue. And then it's gone to the Lords. And the Lords are basically tabling amendment after amendment after amendment. They are going to talk it out. Basically, by the time of the King's speech for end of Parliament in May, basically, if it's not through and then back in the House of Commons, basically the bill is going to fall and it dies. So now I'm someone who is in favour of assisted dying. I have long called for that, having interviewed so many people who are living in horrible pain, no chance of recovery, just feel their lives are not worthwhile, or people who are going to face a horrible, horrible, painful death, saying, I want to die with dignity at the time of my choosing, with my family around me, not at a Dignitas clinic in Switzerland. I could not be more supportive of their right to do that. This law is not the right law. It goes the wrong way, and even the people who are supporting it are basically defending that, yeah, you know, an anorexic 20-year-old would be able to use this if, you know, no, that is not what this should be about. In lots of ways, to me, it doesn't go far enough, as in it's not open to people living with horrific disabilities, that they just say, someone else might say their life is worth living, that other people would say, no, that's not good enough for me, for my quality of life. It doesn't go far enough on that aspect, and there are simply not enough safeguards. They took away the judge-led panel, they took away everything. This is an abomination of a law that will pave the way, basically, if you're poor, if you're lonely, you know, if you're unhappy, you're basically going to be allowed to top yourself legally. This is assisted. I don't know. This is assisted culling, not assisted suicide.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I support assisted dying. I want to have the choice, if I get into that position, as to when I go. And I've been someone who has been right to the edge of suicide. I've attempted it, so I know what it's like getting to that point. And actually, when I was at that point and at that low point, I wouldn't want what's in this bill, with a lack of checks and balances in place, to have allowed me to make a decision to do that within the state. And this highlights how the parliamentary process has been abused to try and push through something that has not been properly debated. The evidence, as you say, has been skewed in so many different ways.
Shockingly.
Really badly. And this is where the House of Lords, everyone criticises it, but actually, well done it, because it's got the ability to, where something really is fundamentally flawed.
And there's no mandate. I mean, the public has been supportive of having an assisted suicide bill for a long time, far ahead of the MPs. Yeah, exactly. However, again, this isn't the right one. Lots of people are very questionable about it. But also, crucially, it's not. This wasn't a government bill. It wasn't in their manifesto. They're talking about like using the Parliamentary Act to push it through, not like you can with a budget. No, sorry, there is no mandate for this. There is no moral argument.
Go away, get it right, and bring it back. Go away,
get it right, and bring it in a manifesto, and think about it. Let's have like a genuinely a royal commission. Let's do it. Let's do it properly. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Love to hear your thoughts on Keir Starmer in China. I mean, keep him. Stay there, mate. Stay there. We're all good with that. Any of the other topics, including yet again, just our veterans facing just prosecution after prosecution for doing their job. Give us a call. Have your say. 0344 499 1000. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
It's an industry that I love. My dad was a publican from the 60s, my late father, you know, my hero. He's a publican, so I'm a publican because of my dad was a publican. That's the only reason. I do not want to see these pubs closing every day, because if you fast forward 5 years' time, we might not have many left. And they've got to stop allowing them to be turned into restaurants or turned into mosques or something
converted
else.
into housing or whatever.
They've got to stop this. We've got to start protecting the pub.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:28 is the time. Let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Ask you particularly about your reaction to Keir Starmer defending cozying up to the Chinese communist dictator Xi Jinping amid these spying claims in number 10, brutal crackdown in Hong Kong, slave labour, you name it. What have we got out of this meeting? Can't really tell. Apparently they had productive talks, making progress, but nothing as far as we can tell. What do you have to say? 0344 499 1000. Jason is in Wiltshire, wants to have his say. Good morning to you, Jason. How are you?
Morning, Julia. Happy belated New Year.
Oh, yes. Have we not spoken since that? Wow, Happy New Year.
No,
what do you make of this trip?
Well, Judith Chalmers, obviously, off we go again. Wish you were here.
Listen, we're not attacking people who travel.
No, but, well, he's not really a person, he's a cretin, but obviously that's another story. We've got this weak, pathetic, well, I don't really know what to describe, a piece of pond life who can't deal a pack of playing cards, is gone to China to try and do these deals for Britain. We're going to get absolutely nothing. The only thing we're ever probably going to get is Timu's going to become rife in the UK.
I get adverts for this. Don't keep saying their name. I don't want to encourage them. But I get adverts for them. They're tacky, horrible goods on every web page. I don't think I've ever bought. I know I've never bought anything from them. I don't understand. Their adverts are everywhere.
Yeah, no, I keep getting those as well. But, I mean, we've got one communist going to the head of communism, really, haven't we? There's going to be no deal for Britain. I mean, look, what was it when he went to Trump in America, was so-called going to get these business deals? We got absolutely jacked.
Well, we've got lower tariffs than the EU have got, but we haven't got this trade deal has never actually materialised. But listen, no, we've agreed. This is what the Prime Minister said. We've made some really good progress. So tariffs for whisky, on visa-free travel to China, and on information exchange and cooperation on irregular migration, focusing particularly on small boats and engine parts. It's a very good constructive meeting with real outcomes. It's talking about, we're looking at how the whisky tariffs can be reduced, what the time frame is. I mean, literally just random words that mean nothing, meaning they're other than there's no deal.
Nothing. But also is how you've got I can just see the pathetic little so-and-so sat there saying to the president, can you stop selling your dinghies to the people traffic smugglers because they keep coming in? There's such an easy way about that. I mean, President Xi, him and his lot, they'd be sat there, like, boys, we're in for a good one today. You know, we can have this bloke's pants down. It's going to be... The amount of stuff, Julia, that it's going to be the cheap Chinese metal. It's going to be the crappy Chinese cars. I mean, I'd be over there if it was me asking about this embassy to say your planning's been stopped, mate. It ain't going to happen. But I mean,
well, again, I wouldn't be asking. I'd be telling them. But no, the trip wouldn't have happened. If Keir Starmer had said that, the trip wouldn't have happened. They only okayed the trip after that was hanging over them because everyone knew he was planning to go to China. He'd look weak. He thought if he didn't go to China, the whole thing's a national embarrassment. Jason, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for that call. Matthew is in Warrington. Hi, Matthew. What do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. So 80 minutes Starmer has gone all the way over to Beijing with a big fanfare, 60 of the biggest business minds in the United Kingdom. Yeah. And he's come back with...
Well, he hasn't come back yet. We'd rather he didn't.
Hopefully he doesn't come back. But when he comes out of a meeting after 80 minutes to say, oh, yeah, well, we've sorted a bit of whiskey out.
No, he's not even claiming that. They're looking at how the tariffs can be reduced and what the time frame is. They haven't even agreed that.
Yeah, Julia, my mum could have done better. My mum Karen could have gone over there and sorted out a better deal than what he's doing. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely scandalous. He should be going in there and saying, all right, what are you going to do about the environment because you're poisoning the world? What are you going to do about dissidents? Because I tell you now, all these people from Hong Kong that got visas from Boris, once that what's the name opens up, that embassy, people are going to start going missing.
Yeah.
Distance, because they will be going missing.
They'll be in that. They'll be in those rooms that we don't know what they're for.
Exactly, and they won't want to know anything about it. And then what you can do is you can send them back to China because you don't need a visa.
It is just a joke, isn't it? I mean, there's nothing, because his whole point is, his whole shtick is, he's there for Britain, he's always caring about the cost of living for us lot, and that's what he's been doing. But there's nothing there, absolutely nothing there.
He'll be asking him, saying, well, how do you persecute your soldiers? Because all I can do is take them to court. I can't put them in a Labour...
Labour camp,
Labour camp like you lot can. But there's any ideas? Because everyone who does anything good for our country, I just want to prosecute them and get rid of them, because we don't want that in this Great Britain of ours.
I can feel the anger. I share it as well. Matthew, thank you very much indeed. Now, God knows we don't want him to get ideas. Tell you what, though, definitely getting some ideas from Xi Jinping about digital ID. And maybe you took a few tips from Xi Jinping about how to deal with your rivals when he got rid of Andy Burnham, who's been bleating on BBC Manchester this morning. We'll find out what he's had to say in a few moments. Up next, let's again take a quick break, and then we're going to talk to former Labour Special Advisor Kevin Marr about this trip by Keir Starmer, and also why on earth he does seem to hate British veterans so much. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:35 is the time. Still joined by Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Just briefly, your reaction to those calls before we go to our next guest, because it's fascinating. And people are just, I mean, so disappointed and angry with Keir Starmer. Total failure of a trip. You could justify this trip if we got something out of it. We just had confirmed that China is going to allow visa-free travel to Britons up to 30 days. I mean, so presumably that's useful for business people who are travelling to China. But I mean, I don't think they had trouble getting visas, did they, beforehand? And people going there as a tourist. I've been advised that I can't go to China. I'd love to go to China and see some of the great sights. I've been advised that I probably wouldn't be safe there.
Oh, I've been told not even to overfly China. But,
oh, that bad?
Yes. That's bad. So my name's on a list somewhere. So that's not going to affect me, this visa-free travel.
No.
I'd love to go. The history and the people and all the rest of it. But I've been told if I land, I will never be allowed to take off again.
On that note, I'd say that's a badge of pride. Saying
well,
that Tom Dugan out and
it's something. It's an accolade I'll quite happily pass to Keir Starmer. Please don't let him come back.
Right, let's talk to our next guest. He's former Labour Special Advisor. He's also now Associate Editor of Labour Uncut, Kevin Marr. Very good morning to you, Kevin.
Morning, Julia.
Morning, Kevin.
Oh, yes. Philip wants to have words as well. That's going to be awkward. Kevin, what do you make of Keir Starmer's trip to China? Because, I mean, you know, he's been called kowtow Keir, never hear Keir. But, you know, if he's going to do a good trade deal, fine. It's not a trade deal. They haven't even agreed tariffs on whiskey. He was granted 40 minutes with the most powerful man in China, most powerful individual man in the world, realistically. He got 80 minutes and we're all supposed to go, oh, aren't we lucky, aren't we lucky? But what has he actually got for us?
Well, I mean, it's the first trip for a British Prime Minister since 2018. I think that's worth saying at the start.
Why? Why? Is it historic, as keep being told?
No, it's not historic. It's not. This isn't Nixon going to China in '73. But it's, I think, still significant because, particularly in those intervening years, China has galloped along economically. It's the second largest economy in the world. It's going to be a force throughout the 21st century. The thing that's going to hold China back, of course, is its population policies by the look of it, by the middle of the century. But for now, it's an important global player. And if you in the interconnected global economy that we've got, we need to have good terms with the second largest potential export market.
We do, but we don't have to necessarily go and like shake hands and be lovey-dovey with this guy. They want to sell us stuff. We want to buy cheap tat.
Pretty much.
The Prime Minister and Ed Miliband want to basically dough down our entire economy by buying cheaper solar panels and wind turbines and EVs. I mean, no one needs to have a meeting on a red carpet for that.
No, absolutely. This is a transactional relationship. Of course, it's going to be in a sense. You sup with a long spoon when you deal with China, given China's lack of respect for democracy and human rights and all the rest of it. But we also deal with lots of countries around the world that have got dismal human rights records. I mean, look at the Saudis or whoever you like. So there's a kind of an economic imperative to doing that. It's better to have good relations with China than bad relations with China, and in a sense, that's all this visit really entails.
What did you make of this announcement that Chinese police are going to help stop channel crossings under a deal agreed, where basically they're going to link an intelligence sharing agreement to halt the supply routes of gear for smuggling gangs, in particular, roughly 2/3 of the engines on the boats that have been used by channel migrants are coming from China, and therefore they're going to try and stop that. I mean, A, they're not going to. B, they can't stop it. And C, is that how we're smashing the gangs this week?
It's a little bit trite, but it also underscores the point that economically China is an absolute global powerhouse, and it's making stuff and selling stuff to us in the West at a right.
How are they managing that? Is it helped by the fact that they actually use fossil fuels to fuel their energy?
Of course they do. I mean, the Chinese will say, "Well, we didn't wreck the global we didn't wreck the global environment for the last 200 years. You did in the West." That's what they would say. But China's also galloping along with renewables at the same time. Yes, it's opening coal mines. Yes, but it's also galloping along with renewables as well, and that's worth understanding, because if we have a tilt in China and China goes more down that road,
they won't. They may be evil and murderous, but they ain't stupid.
They're flogging us, as you say, all our solar panels. So I mean, they are the kind of cutting edge of a lot of this, and it's encouraging China to be a good global citizen as well.
That's such a load of nonsense.
The big mistake we've made, and America's made, principally, giving China favoured trading status for 40, 50 years, is we did not insist on democratization going hand in hand with economic liberalization. That's the big mistake we've made with China, and we may make in other places, which we shouldn't make again, which is we want you to ante up, we want human rights, we want democracy, we want transparency. It's no good saying, as the Chinese will say, well, we're all about stability and we're all about predictability. Yes, you are, but that's because you do it at the end of an AK-47. What we want to see is proper respect for democracy and human rights going alongside economic development. And that's the big mistake we made in the second half of the 20th century.
Talking about respect for human rights, respect for democracy, it was press story today that some of the Labour councils that apparently decided of their own free will when given the option to delay their local elections by a year, 29 councils in total, most of them being Labour councils, not all though, to the shame of the other parties, basically said they were getting a lot of pressure, it's been revealed, from the Labour Party's central office. Basically, we want you to cancel these elections because basically they knew that they were going to do badly, Reform, the Greens taking them on. It doesn't sound like this Labour government is a big fan of democracy either.
Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, in all candour, what you're seeing here is a rather unusual red-blue alliance to keep reform out. I mean, I think that's the geopolitics of what's happened here. You've got a lot of Tory councils, they're not all mainly Labour councils, a lot of Tory councils as well.
No, they are mainly Labour councils that have agreed to do this.
But yeah, there's a lot of Tory district councils.
There are a few Tory councils, but most of them are Labour-run councils.
It's a red-blue alliance to say let's keep reform.
But the only reason councils are able to delay these elections is because the government is allowed to do that under an Act of Parliament which allows for council elections or any elections to be delayed or cancelled if there is a really serious it's an emergency. There's extreme circumstances such as war or, and I disagree with this, but a pandemic. There is neither at the current time. There's a bureaucratic rearranging of desks going on. That's not a good enough reason.
It's existential in as much as the county councils and the district councils are going to be abolished. So yes, we can have elections to them. They exist right now, of course. So do we have elections to them now, which cost money, or do they're going to be scrapped in the next 18 months anyway? They will disappear. New councils will emerge, at which point the counties and the districts will get squashed together. It'll save an awful lot of taxpayers' money, and there'll be fresh elections to the new councils. That's essentially what's going on. Now, what should have happened, and I take this point, Julie, what should have happened is the government should have said to Whitehall, get your backside in gear, make sure this is sorted, because I do not want to be a minister cancelling elections. So get these new councils in place. Let's have elections to the new councils, PDQ, and make sure we hit that deadline. And it's not happened because lazy civil servants haven't got it sorted.
Well, I'm not entirely sure then giving them an extra year is going to be the answer. But again, at the end of the day, the idea that lazy civil servants and incompetence is allowed to delay local democracy is unacceptable.
I agree.
But the government has allowed it to happen. And again, the government that claims they care about democracy, what about the democracy of Labour Party members wanting to stand in a by-election and being blocked from doing so? Andy Burnham, he's given his first interview to BBC Radio Manchester, talking about his decision to stand for the Labour Party in the Gorton and Denton parliamentary by-election. He said he wanted to fight the politics of reform, and he said it was very hard to be blocked from standing. It does appear that there is absolutely no love lost. There's a lot of queries over claims that have come out from the Labour Party about he was told he was going to be blocked. Should he have been blocked?
Yeah. No, he shouldn't have been blocked. He should have been allowed to stand. Andy Burnham's a huge asset for the Labour Party. If he'd have been the candidate for this by-election, there wouldn't be any talk about whether Labour will lose a by-election. Andy Burnham would have won it at a canter.
But then there'd be the mayorality of the...
Yes, it would have required a by-election there, but we have by-elections like this all the time. It's not that unusual.
Well, hold on a minute. You were just saying with local elections and all the cost. I mean, the cost of running 20 constituency by-elections, effectively, which is what a mayoralty in Manchester would be.
It's one by-election across Greater Manchester with councils that are already having elections in May anyway, so it's effectively an extra ballot paper on the polling booth.
Fixing an election,
pretty much
isn't it, really?
Andy should have been allowed to stand. I mean, the context here clearly is what happens in May. If the opinion polls are correct, given where Keir Starmer's popularity ratings are, and as I say, they sit at the bottom of the Mariana Trench at the moment. But given they are bad, and if the election results in May in Wales and Scotland and across all the councils in England are very, very bad, it is very likely, on the basis of political physics, that Keir Starmer will face a challenge to his leadership.
But not by Andy Burnham now. That's
not by Andy Burnham. I mean, this was the context. There were a lot of supporters of Andy Burnham clearly in the parliamentary party that wanted Burnham in there to play a role potentially post-May, and that isn't going to happen. Now, cui bono, who benefits from this? I suspect West Streeting probably does, and a number of other people that will think the field is clear, because Andy Burnham would have been that centre-left candidate.
Talking of poll rating, something that's not going to be helping the Prime Minister is his absolute obsession, it would appear, in his past as a barrister. No reason to think when he's a human rights barrister his views have changed, to basically persecute British troops, particularly those in Northern Ireland. But we know that in terms of policy now, allowing Northern Ireland veterans to basically be able to be challenged and put on trial again and again and again for actions during the Troubles, even when they've been found innocent again and again. And we also know that he has worked in the past with Lord Hermer, of course, his big mate, now Attorney General, human rights barrister, also with Phil Shiner, completely disgraced solicitor, found to have basically made up evidence about British troops serving in Iraq. He's now, he's no longer a solicitor and convicted of fraud for those crimes. But he also contributed to a book edited by Phil Shiner, a disgraced lawyer, calling for European human rights laws, the ECHR, to be used to investigate British troops in Iraq. Why does our Prime Minister hate our troops so much?
Well, I don't think he does. And I think Keir Starmer clearly in his previous life was and is, I guess, a very well-respected human rights advocate and expert often in complex areas of law. Now, this story about this case that was brought in 2007 about 6 killed Iraqis and the circumstances in which they were killed, which apparently has changed, bring the ECHR into orbit and has changed the approach to prosecution of soldiers. Downing Street are very clear this morning that Keir Starmer did not act as an advocate, that he acted as an advisor to the court on areas of complex human rights.
He did it pro bono.
And that was it.
For free. He chose to do it.
He did it for free, but then again, lots of advocates and lots of PR professionals and lobbyists do things for free because it helps them in their profession.
Barristers take money for cases that are part of their job.
They do, but the story is substantially not true. Is the issue. It makes a great story, but it's not true.
It is true. Can I bring Philip Ingram in? Do you mind? I know you know each other.
Yeah.
Former senior military intelligence officer. I know you want to ask Kevin Marr a question.
Well, it's Kevin. You look at the prosecution of troops in Iraq. We're seeing the same thing about prosecution of troops in Northern Ireland, but we're not seeing a call from all sides in Northern Ireland for a line to be drawn under things where terrorists have been given on-the-run letters. There has been early release for those that were prosecuted under the Good Friday Agreement. Would you not agree that we should actually, until everything is sorted out because it's a mess, draw a line under all of it? And have everyone investigated again equally from terrorist organisations or from the security forces under the law?
Kevin Marr?
I have long written and advocated that there should be a proper truth and reconciliation process to end the situation in Northern Ireland. Truth, I think, is paramount. I don't speak for any of the victims on any side, so it's important that if they've got a view, I don't try and diminish that view. If you've lost loved ones, that's that's very personal, clearly. But I think in terms of the politics of this, it's a mess. Of course, it's a mess. It's in nobody's interests to see people in their 60s, 70s, 80s put in jail. We're not seeing that. It's worth saying, but the potential is there. Whether you're an ex-IRA guy or an ex-loyalist or an ex-British soldier, it's not in anyone's interest to see that happen. And I don't sense anybody saying that's the result I want to see.
But it's only happening on one side.
It's not happening on one side, clearly, because lots of loyalists and Republicans went to jail for a very long time. British soldiers didn't.
Since the Good Friday Agreement.
Their killings were not investigated in the 1970s. That's the issue. Yeah. Now, let's bring it to a head. Let's get to the truth. Okay. And that includes Republicans, it includes loyalists particularly to issues that have not been resolved. But the British state, and that, I'm afraid, is always the blocker.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, Kevin Marr. Thank you. I know you guys both want to. You'll go hammer and tongs at it, but 10:50 is time. We're going to have to take a break. Up next, we're going to be talking about a convicted terrorist standing as a pro-Gaza candidate in a local council election. But you can't guess where. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
It's the UK on DAB+. on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:53 is the time. Let's welcome Danny Stone to the show. He's the Chief Executive of the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Two stories I want to talk to you about. First, a convicted terrorist, a Muslim activist who was jailed for his part in an armed terror plot, is standing to become a councillor this May. Jailed for 5 years back in 1999 for conspiring to bomb the British consulate, an Anglican church, and a Swiss-owned hotel in Yemen. Lovely guy. He claims, well, that was all in his past. He made, quote, some mistakes. Now he wants to be a candidate for an alliance of independents, basically the pro-Gara independents, set to contest some 20 seats at, guess where, Birmingham City Council. What on earth is going on, Danny?
Well, I think there's a number of things in this, Julia. I mean, firstly, when we have independent candidates standing, whether that be a kind of alliance or some kind of informal gathering, you don't have the kind of due diligence measures that the formal parties have, albeit those due diligence measures, as we know, sometimes fail. But nonetheless, it's better than what one has as a kind of group of independents. If we look even at the independent members of parliament who've been elected, there are those of them who are engaging in Holocaust inversion and anti-Semitic tropes on social media and indeed in the chamber. So I do fear, I mean, as you say, you know, this gentleman has said that this was in his past, but I do fear about the quality of public official we're having in a city in particular, which has already experienced problems as you.
And I'm all in favour of redemption and people change their minds. You know, he says, no, I was a young lad, I'd been called, you know, horrible racist terms. This is how I used my anger. But I mean, you know, again, very pro Gaza. And again, I'm not entirely sure that people who are, I mean, people can vote for who they want in this country, but voting along sort of foreign policy lines, sectarian lines, you know, we've got the Muslim Vote, an organisation called Muslim Vote, who set up in 2023, and they've already said we are going to advise the 28% of the population in the Gorton and Denton by-election who are Muslim to vote for the Green candidate. We don't even have the Green candidate yet, I believe. But, you know, when we have that sort of sectarian voting along these lines, often on policies which have nothing whatsoever to do with, you know, your bin collections, bit of a big issue in Birmingham. They don't have regular bin collections anymore. That's very, very worrying.
It is, and I think that the more divisive elections become, the worse it is for all of us, the worse it is for democracy, really. As you say, you know, what do I want from a local official? I want them to be concentrating on the bins and on, you know, making my neighbourhood safer. And if the focus, as we saw with the Maccabi Tel Aviv saga, if the focus becomes a kind of foreign policy issue or a sectarian discourse, then the results will be bad for all of us.
Absolutely. But again, they did claim they were making Birmingham safer over the ban on Maccabi Tel Aviv because, you know, a Jew-free and Israeli-free Birmingham they felt was safer for them. That's what we were told, because, of course, they were going to basically attack those fans. It's just extraordinary, the world being turned on its head. Also turned on its head by a watchdog, the Ofsted watchdog, investigating the Bristol Brunel Academy. This is the school in Bristol where the local MP, Damien Egan, who is a Jewish man, wanted to visit the school, prevented from visiting the school by pro-Palestinian campaigners who claimed they thought it would be so sort of triggering for the teachers, not the pupils, the teachers at the school to have a Jewish MP in the school, that it would be unsafe. Ofsted there has done an investigation. They said they found no evidence of political bias at the school. They said they was concerned that the Labour MP for Bristol North East visit may have been postponed due to coordinated pressure from staff and external groups, and therefore potentially in violation of the Department for Education guidance on political impartiality in schools. But inspectors found no evidence to substantiate these concerns within the school. How on earth have they come to that conclusion?
Well, again, there's a number of things in this. I mean, firstly, it's worth saying this is one incident, but go back 2 years and another Jewish MP, Andrew Percy, was warning in Parliament that pupils as young as 11 in schools in this country were writing letters saying they wanted vengeance, questioning, saying, I believe not all Jewish people are bad. Activists were being invited into schools. So this is a wider problem, and it has been going on for years. We've got a national education union that's it's trying to diminish what it's doing, but it's doing an investigation into anti-Semitism, as is the Secretary of State. And so, I mean, there's a real problem here, specifically on Damien. I'm yet to see the protests against MPs who are members of Labour Friends of Bangladesh, or I could have named
because he's a member of Labour Friends of Israel. Yeah,
he is, and I'm yet to see those bans being encouraged by teachers and others in the vicinity. Schools are supposed to be places of debate and discussion and learning. Yeah. What are they doing?
I know, it's really, and they weren't even using the defence. Oh well, there were going to be protests outside. No, it would be unsafe inside because of the teachers, and apparently many of the parents as well. We have a serious problem. I mean, look, we know it's in our police. We know. My God, we know it's in the BBC. Forgot to mention Jews as the 6 million people who were killed in the Holocaust on Holocaust Memorial Day of all days. I mean, just this stuff doesn't happen by accident. It's a concerted campaign. It's genuinely scary. I would long for the day when I don't have to do any items on this, but we will continue to discuss it while it is still an issue, and where anyone in this country of any faith cannot go anywhere they want to because of their faith. That is a problem. Danny Stone, so appreciate you joining us, Anti-Semitism Policy Trust Chief Executive. Sorry, wish we had a bit long for that. Lots to talk about today. I love your thoughts on that. Love your thoughts on Keir Starmer kowtowing in China, getting an 80-minute meet with Xi Jinping. Didn't really do anything, didn't really get anything for us. What is the point of kowtow Keir being there other than selling us out yet again? Selling us down the Yangtze River, as far as I can tell. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. More coming up after 11. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk, the home of common sense. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, great to have your company as always. Lots to talk about. If you do miss anything on the show, don't forget to go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit and subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, more about Kowtow Kier getting basically absolutely nothing, but defending his decision to cosy up to China on that trip to see Xi Jinping. You got a full 80 minutes with him. Isn't he a lucky boy? Aren't you proud? Are you proud? Yes. We'll also talk about the government delaying any overhaul of the welfare system. They are not going to overhaul the welfare system. And no Labour Prime Minister is going to do it, given this lot of backbenchers either. Donald Trump's chilling threat to Iran, but why is he not defending those pro-democracy activists who are on the streets when he promised to do that? And how benefit claimants in Scotland are handed the equivalent of, wait for it, a £56,000 a year salary under the SNP. Oh, and by the way, if you don't live in Scotland, don't worry, you're paying extra taxes to pay for that happening in Scotland, like we are with the tuition fees and the free prescriptions as well. Enjoy. Anyway, joining us for all the chat today, I'd like to say, is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Morning.
Morning.
Question, can I say...
Yeah, go on.
No. What?
Well, I was going to say, it's lovely being at the home of common sense, because there's very little of it around in the government or anywhere else at the moment.
We point this out on an hourly basis.
We need a home for it to focus on.
It would be really nice if the home was at number 10, wouldn't it? But we haven't had that for...
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, as long as I can remember. Look, Keir Starmer has defended cozying up to China, meeting Xi Jinping amid these spying claims, amid giving in to the Chinese embassy, the brutal crackdown in Hong Kong, slave labour camps. Yeah, I mean, you name it. China utterly taking advantage of us on the world markets. What is your reaction to that? I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1, standard network rate message. Philip, we've been talking about this in the last hour as well. Kowtow Kier, never hear Kier, 80-minute Kier. They were supposed to have a 40-minute meeting with Xi Jinping, but it lasted for 20 minutes. I mean, it's very, very, very exciting. I mean, we're so proud. I mean, genuinely, this is embarrassing.
Yeah. Mind you, I have taken a 6-hour flight to go for a meeting that actually didn't happen.
So that's worse.
To come back again.
Well, you're the Prime Minister of a major global nation.
No, they hadn't asked me to. So, but you know, it's ridiculous. Everything that he's doing, and it's quite clear. Don't care, because
I love that he's so forgettable. You forgot his name.
Exactly. He hasn't brought up any of the important issues, like Jimmy Lai and human rights.
No, he says he did. No, they say they raise these issues, and if they do, they go, by the way, I need to mention this, and this, and then they can say they've mentioned it, but that's it.
Yeah, exactly. There's no substance coming out of it,
No.
and so no decisions on business, no decisions on any of the major issues that are in there. And he had 80 minutes after a big flight and all the rest of it. He was clearly nervous about it. He knew that this is what was going to happen, because you saw him getting off the aircraft and the way he walked down and all the rest. From a body language perspective, he was scared to pieces. He didn't know what to do.
You told me something before we came on air, which I hadn't clocked until you'd put it. And if you've been seeing some of the footage of Keir Starmer walking down those stairs, and he arrived yesterday, obviously, and then they had the meeting overnight. They're 10 hours ahead in Beijing. They had the meeting overnight. Historic meeting, as all these political journalists keep saying. It's first time in 8 years. That's not historic, loves. Seriously, get a dictionary. Please get a dictionary. But you told me something about how the Chinese do this.
Yeah, the honour guard and the individual greeting him.
On the red carpet.
If you look at all of them, the Chinese are known for not being the tallest people in the world. That's the Dutch. When you're doing, but if you look at all of those that were in the front row of the honour guard that's there, they're all taller than Keir Starmer, and the individual that met him is taller, and that's so that the Chinese are looking down on the other world leader that's coming in to make them feel.
I love that they care about these things.
But it shows the level of detail that the Chinese put into planning everything, and it's all about manipulation,
including hacking into our Prime Minister's phone.
It's all about manipulating the environment and making someone feel uncomfortable. And boy, just look at Keir Starmer's body language. Did he feel uncomfortable? Oh yes.
It also looked really cold. Everyone else was like, they obviously, wrapped up in their scarves and their gloves and their coats. And here he is with his shirt. You can see his shirt. Yeah, he
and a black shirt with a dark suit.
That was later on. Yeah, you're a man of great sartorial elegance.
He probably had white socks on as well. Yes.
You're not happy. The other thing has been revealed that not only do they take burner phones and they're worried about, you said even they take a BA flight because they can't trust when it comes back that it's not been being fiddled with, because again we can't secure our own Prime Minister's plane, for the love of God. They also apparently take these little mini pop-up tents for the Prime Minister and his aides to get changed in, so no one, for the love of God, has to see them naked.
Yes, the cameras in the rooms and all the rest of it, which will be bugged to pieces. But again, it shows that there's no control over where they stay. Why isn't staying with
the embassy? Have they got running water yet? Because the Chinese to each other running water when they weren't going to get that embassy
residence
here.
And all the rest of it. And why there aren't secure rooms for the Prime Minister to be in. And
but this is the thing. You're going to a country that is run by a murderous authoritarian dictator who has 1 million Uyghurs in slave labour camps, who is busy basically trying to sell us as much tat and eco stuff made in coal-fired factories to ruin our economies. They are having an absolute laugh where they crack down on pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong. They've threatened to imprison for life Jimmy Lai, a 78-year-old pro-democracy activist and businessman who is a British citizen and has been for about 30 years, and he is in prison right now on spurious charges, no real judicial process going on. We're going to be talking to his son in less than an hour's time. And they go along, they kowtowed over the embassy, because basically it's quite clear the go-ahead for this visit was only, you need to prove the embassy, or you ain't getting the visit, mate, because you're a nobody and we don't care about you. Xi Jinping didn't meet him off the plane, did he?
Nope.
There's no, I'm sorry, it was probably a second-hand red carpet. They don't care. He got 40 minutes with Xi Jinping, who's just busy purging his generals. It went on longer, but you're saying earlier, that's probably just the time it took to translate the burbling nonsense. They're running rings around us. This is not us being a global player. This is us looking like, frankly, an embarrassment on the world stage. And we've got nothing for it other than, we can get 30-day visa-free travel to China. Who's going to China?
It's also proving to Xi Jinping that the UK's leader is a non-entity and therefore is no threat whatsoever. So Xi Jinping will continue to trample all over us. He'll continue to suck down every bit of data that people have got on their phones. If you've got Chinese apps and other bits.
Well, we found again. I don't have TikTok on, but our mobile phones are made in China mostly, aren't they? Those are the bits.
They are. The manufacturers that do there are very good at making sure that the Chinese aren't doing anything. The big threat are the apps that are coming in because they're completely unregulated. And why does China want access to all the data? Because they can then build a profile up on every individual in every country over a long period of time. Whenever they get AI on top of quantum computing and analyse it, they will know what makes you tick, what makes your relationship with everyone that's in your circle tick, and they'll be able to influence that very subtly over a period of time in the future.
And they do that on social media. They do that with stuff that we see. The adverts we see.
How many times you get adverts? You seem to think of something, and all of a sudden the adverts start popping up. Well,
I have a conversation with my husband. We're out on a walk. And because he's got an Apple Watch, there's 3 of us in this marriage, I've said.
Yeah, exactly.
I go home and something I've never Googled if it will come up as an advert.
I've stopped wearing an Apple Watch for that very reason, because it's listening in all of the time. And China, that's stuff that they can do legally. Think of them getting all the stuff that you don't want them to get.
Got the industrial espionage, but also we know like the bots. The bot farms. This is on an industrial scale.
More than an industrial scale.
And they're doing it. And is that so they can target people for spying? And we've seen these spy charges that have been dropped in the last year.
It's so they can target people for spying, but it's also so they can influence people. So that if you're coming up to a different business deal where you're trying to bid in whether your manufacturing is going to be in Europe or in China, the CEO can be targeted, and the different companies can be targeted over a 6-12 month period.
It's really subtle stuff.
With very subtle stuff that comes in, and not just the CEO, but those that are advising them and briefing them, because you know what their baselines are, you know what
they're interfering undoubtedly with our elections and Russia 100%. As well, and they're interfering in a way to undermine sort of social cohesion. They're pushing a lot of this, the trans madness, the eco madness. They fund a lot of this stuff. They're pushing the stuff that divides us. And basically undermines the sort of the concrete base of our civilization.
And so many people say, I can never be influenced like that. And I call it hacking your serotonin. And if you think, and this will appeal to people.
These are the people who say, I'm never influenced by adverts on the telly.
Well, exactly. But this is the sort of thing where people of a certain age. If I say hands that do dishes, you've just put a smile on your face. You know exactly the brand that I'm talking about. You can probably hear the music and everything else. But that smile comes because the chemical balance in your brain has changed. And therefore, if that's very overt done through an advert. If you can do that covertly without people realising it by manipulating other bits and pieces, you can change the way people think. You can change the way people vote, and you can undermine democracy. Does China want to do that?
Yes. Whew. Again, it's another one of those happy Thursdays, folks. I mean, genuinely, this is what we're up against. This isn't conspiracy theory stuff. This isn't like
it's reality.
It's reality. It's what they do. I just hope we're spying on them as well, but I doubt we're doing it very well.
We are doing it quite well, but not to the same degree, because culturally it's very difficult for us to break in there because they're not as open to other cultures coming in as we are to their culture.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, folks. 0344 499 1000. Do give us a call to have your say on that. I mean, look, we've not got anything out of it. We've got, they're trying to talk about tariffs, visa-free travel for 30 days. I mean, that's what we have that with most countries. I'm not sure it's that much bother. I go to various countries where I have to get a visa. You literally buy it for $25 in the airport. I mean, get over yourselves, people. But there's nothing about, the spying in the UK, or the hacking of the number 10 phones. Nothing that's going to solve, Jimmy Lai being held captive in Hong Kong.
Stealing all the research out of a university.
Yeah, I mean, well, they bought up our universities, haven't they? I mean, slave labour camps, all this stuff. None of that is being dealt with. We know that. Kemi Badenoch said the Prime Minister shouldn't have gone, and she wouldn't go. Was she right?
Yes and no. Timing-wise, yes, but the Prime Minister needs to go. China's the second largest economy in the world. We're the sixth largest economy. You have to deal with it.
But he only got the visit because he agreed to the Chinese embassy.
Exactly.
Which he shouldn't have.
And he shouldn't have done that. He should have said, no, you can stick your embassy where your embassy doesn't shine. And then we're not going to have you here on a royal visit. So go away, mate.
Yeah, okay, and you're not going to give you a second-hand football either as your gift. Oh, he must be so happy with that. What do you make of, sticking with world affairs, Donald Trump's threat to Iran about his beautiful armada of warships ready to attack? This isn't about helping the people, the pro-democracy activists in Iran. We've seen tens of thousands. 30,000 seems to be the bare minimum of the number who've been killed. That may have been just, frankly, over a couple of days. We are looking at horrific numbers, people slain on the streets just for asking for the most basic rights we used to take for granted. We perhaps don't take them for granted here anymore. But this is about the nuclear threat. Is this saber-rattling? Is this going to lead to attacks on Iran? Is it going to lead to them giving up their attempts to make nuclear weapons? Is this going to lead to the fall of the mullahs?
No, but it is influence. It's influencing the regime, and they will know perfectly well through backdoor messaging that's going in that this is all about the way that they've cracked down on the demonstrators in Iran. Yeah. Donald Trump's got four things that he can do. Do nothing. That's the easy one, but he promised to do something, so he has to do something. And
he said he'd do something before now.
And to do something, you want to be able to escalate or de-escalate, and this is the lowest level. Go against nuclear targets if he decides to do that. He can go against the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, who are the ones that have carried out most of the atrocities. That's the next level. Or he can go for a complete regime change. But we don't have a good history of regime change in the Middle East, especially. Look at Iraq, look at Libya. Look at Iran. Iran's coming next. Yeah. Look at Syria. Look at Afghanistan. We haven't got. You need a follow-up, and the follow-up could be almost as bad. Or worse than
often ends up being that way, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, again, there's, the authoritarian leaders are keeping out a lot of the mad people. Where are you? I know where you are. We already spoke about it, and I knew where you were beforehand. On Keir Starmer, basically, now, I mean, we've all these stories about the troubles and basically opening up the and again, it's always with Lord Hermer. His name just keeps on coming up. Yeah. He's the also human rights barrister, big mate of Keir Starmer, now the Attorney General, who's basically put international law, European Convention on Human Rights, just embedded it in every single thing that government does, and basically allowing veterans to basically face from the troubles in Northern Ireland. Just, prosecution after prosecution after prosecution. Some people in their third or fourth prosecution is about keep being found innocent in all the investigations. But now it's emerged that Keir Starmer, we knew that he'd been involved in a court case before alongside Lord Hermer and alongside a guy called Phil Shiner. He's a disgraced lawyer who basically was the biggest ambulance chasing lawyer. The solicitor was basically trying to get all the he was basically paying for fake evidence from Iraq against British soldiers serving there, trying to bring cases. He's making money no matter what, but getting payoffs, basically bringing cases and making money that way. He basically got struck off as a solicitor and a fraud conviction. That's how bad he is. Well, he basically edited a book, this guy Phil Shiner. Keir Starmer contributed to it when he was a barrister, calling for the European human rights laws to be used to investigate British troops in Iraq. He accused the government of a deliberate effort to alter international law, claimed it had given British troops troops and effective immunity when operating in Iraq. This is a book. It's not the long distance past. It's 2008. That is not long. You know, he's an adult. You know, he's fully in his prime as a human rights barrister. Does he just really not like British troops, or does his love of international human rights law just top everything else? In which case, Mrs. Starmer, you probably want to have a word with him.
It's the old saying, a leopard never changes his spots. You know, it's quite clear that his fundamental underlying principles are European human rights law first. Attack those that are representatives of an institution, because you can attack it procedurally, i.e. Troops don't care about the individual, because people go, oh well, they've been through a legal process and they've been found innocent even after all of that, so they're fine. No, they've had 13 years or 15 years of hell, of not being able to live their lives. You can't get that time back again, where they've been pushed to the edge of suicide and some pushed beyond the edge of suicide. This is unforgivable, and Keir Starmer needs to get rid of
these aren't people who have, you know, been found again, all big question marks about horrific crimes where they've raped or murdered people in cold blood. We're talking about being investigated again and again and found to have done nothing wrong.
And you know, they've made split-second decisions, which those decisions will have killed someone, but they have actually saved even more lives in doing that. And to attack them is just unforgivable in any way, shape or form. Starmer needs to get rid of Lord Hermer as quickly as possible, because the two of them together are toxic, and then Starmer needs to go. I don't understand how any veteran can be in Starmer's cabinet after these revelations have come out and still hold their head high. I
couldn't agree with you more. It's just extraordinary, isn't it? And again, we are not talking about people, you know, who've never faced any sort of prosecution for absolute wrongdoing, because we talked about this on the show yesterday. The British military have a very, very good reputation of you know, being within the letter of the law. Things go wrong in war. It's a war zone. We need to be very wary. Same with the police. Very wary of making judgments about, again, split-second decisions where people lose lives. It's a war zone.
I think we should take Lord Hermer and put him in what's called the killing room in Hereford, and have him, an SAS team come in.
Is this where you're trained?
Yeah, an SAS team comes in and shows what it's like, and then give him a weapon with blank rounds in it, and put him in with the SAS team to come in to make a decision, and put him in a position where he's in a dilemma as to whether to shoot or not to shoot, because he will then suddenly realise just how difficult.
And we all need to recognise that. And exactly. I think that when you have a time when a lot of our politicians had actually served, they've been conscripted, they served in war. They understood it a bit better. Just finally, before we go to break, I do want to talk about pupils who get suspended from schools. Schools are going to be told to stop sending suspended pupils home. I don't even understand that sentence. This is under new government plans. Children in English schools, in schools in England, will no longer be sent home by default when they get into trouble from next year. And basically, I mean, look, we all remember, don't we? Well, remember a certain age, when Tony Blair brought in this whole no expulsions from school rule. Basically, a load of people who've gone to grammar schools and private schools where they didn't have kids who were in class throwing chairs, disrupting every single lesson and stopping the other 29 kids getting an education, all went, oh, this is terrible, oh, these poor children. A lot of those children who cause disruption, particularly, and we're talking about kids in primary school now getting suspended, they come from troubled homes. Things are going horribly wrong, and perhaps sending them home ain't the solution, you know. But here's the thing: you can't keep them in the classroom, and most schools don't have a spare room and a spare couple of teachers to look after those kids. That's the whole issue, is that they're stopping getting taught. But there's all these people who had a very privileged education who have no idea what a bog standard comp is like, or just any ordinary state school where you've got those kids. And you need to look after the needs of the majority over the needs of the minority at that point. And those kids, I think they absolutely do need help. But basically taking away the power from these teachers, whether it's, you know, expulsions, suspensions, is unless they are actually violent, and a lot of these kids now are. This is again madness, this whole sort of hand wringing as opposed to really clear signals. And also, by the way, part of the issue with the parents, like, we're sending your kid home, they're your problem now. Well, it's partly punishing the parents, and deliberately, because the parents are usually the problem.
That's the important thing, is making the parents set up and go, you have to take responsibility for them, and when their behaviour gets right, they can come back into school. But, you know, someone who's suspended being kept in school, that's not being suspended, that's going into detention.
Yeah.
Quite simple.
But someone actually has to sit over these kids.
Exactly. And then if you're saying no, it's suspended, but they're being kept in school, well, if they've been kept in school against their will, surely that's kidnapping, and surely European human...
all kids are legally kept in school against their will.
But if they're not in class, they're not getting educated and everything else, they've been kept in school as a punishment without actually going through a due process. I'm sure the European Court, Keir Starmer, will do that.
Don't give them ideas. Please don't give them ideas. But I mean, again, we know that a lot of these kids need a lot of help. They're being kids. These kids are often being abused. They're being neglected. They're not being parented properly. There's talk about they'll just be out. They'll be out and they'll get groomed, or they'll be doing county lines, drug muling. I completely understand that.
If they're over 16, send them in the military.
Yeah, well, there you are.
Compulsory service.
Military don't want them, though, do they?
Well, if they join the military as a full-time recruit, yes, the military will take them and sort them out.
Yeah, and they would sort them out.
Oh yeah.
Again, this is what's so tragic. Again, this is total lack of understanding. I once talked to a tutor at Oxford College about what would you do, like, to get more kids into top universities, or to get them to get better grades. And he said, I'd have an ex-soldier in every classroom. Because every time, especially teachers, it's been so feminised in terms of, it's women. Frankly, a lot of these young lads don't take women seriously. But basically, if you've got a big bloke there who goes, sit down, shut up, they will. But they need to be able to use force. I'm afraid they do need to be able to use force.
When I went through school, your discipline was at the core of everything, and
got a clip round the ear in my day.
You knew the teachers that you could get away with things. You knew the teachers that you couldn't, and there was respect. There was respect across the board for teachers, for your elders, whether they were elder pupils and all the rest of it.
And here's the thing: if you got told off at school, your biggest fear was your parents
going home, and my mum, oh my goodness, I remember
everyone. Am I right? There was a point when you got to the world, when Britain started going wrong, was when you suddenly went from, oh my God, I hope my parents don't find out about this, to whoosh, oh, I'm going to get my mum in, and my mum and my dad are going to have a go at you, Mr. Teacher. And the parents would do that.
Yeah, I got a tap in the hand, on the back of my hand, from the headmaster for slamming the doors in the toilet when I was 5 years old. Wow. And I remember going home and telling my mum, and I got more than a slap in the hand after that.
Times was different. I'm just saying. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts on all that. Love to hear your thoughts on all the things we're talking about. Plenty more to come. 11:25 is the time to take a quick break. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. Your call's up next. This is Talk. Welcome.
Muslims, the 12 million Uyghur Muslims who are the victims of the most appalling human rights abuse. And that is just the beginning in China. We know what kind of a country is it. Do you trust our Prime Minister to raise that issue with the Chinese leader?
Well, I think we've learned from 18 very punishing months that you can't trust this Prime Minister to negotiate a Chinese restaurant menu, let alone a trade deal or any other deal with the hardline communists.
On DAB+. DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:27 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Interestingly, these calls are all about, Keir Starmer and his absolute love of international human rights, but not the rights, for instance, of, protesters on British streets, or indeed of veterans to a quiet life after serving the country. Carl is in Liverpool. Hello, Carl, what do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. What a disgusting human being.
Don't talk about Philip Ingram like that.
No, Philip's amazing. There's a facility near Nottingham called the Defence and National Rehabilitation Centre.
Yep.
And I went there in 2018-19 when I got injured.
Yeah.
And it is a facility, it's a magnificent facility, and it helps injured and wounded soldiers, loss of limbs, PTSD, all that sort of thing. I would love Keir Starmer to go there and tell them what he did, because he did that free of charge as well. By the way,
that's the key thing. It wasn't just that cab rank rule, was it? Like, well, that's the job you had to do, and you have to do it.
He's just a disgusting human being. I have no respect for him whatsoever. He's shown his true colours throughout this whole term he's been in. I just think we need rid of him now. He needs to go.
I know, look, we've spoken to only very recently about him, but do you think that actually, certainly when it comes to veterans, he's actually putting people off joining the military right now?
I mean, we're crying out for people right across the tri-service to join, especially the army. And him us finding this out will put a lot of people off. I mean, even though I've still got quite a few friends that are still serving now, if God forbid something else does break out and we do go to war, and we are deployed, and people get into that sort of situation again, they might not pull the trigger.
Yeah.
For fear of doing something, or
they or their comrades in arms could die as a result.
Yeah, I think this is the thing, Julie. There's in this country, our military, we're not really respected either as veterans or serving.
I agree with you.
We don't get it like compared to the Americans that are just absolutely adored.
Yeah.
We don't get the same respect, and it shows now by the government. Cuts after cuts. We've had cuts after cuts, which has diminished the service. We're using kit that is so old. We have to lease it from civilian places to get it. We also have members of the military, Julia, that are so highly trained within trade, but then the military will go and then pay someone else to do all the jobs on camps, while you've got soldiers sitting around that are trained, gas trained, engineered, all that sort of stuff that they can use their skills whilst they're not really deployed in other situations.
It's just, the whole thing is just madness. It really is. Carl, thank you for that call. Very heartfelt, I can feel. Barry's in Norwich, wants to have his say on the same topic. Good morning to you, Barry.
Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Phil. Yeah, I'd just like to say a couple of things, right? The whole thing with Keir Starmer and him doing this pro bono is an absolute disgrace, right? And I don't see how this individual can remain Prime Minister of his country when one moment he's chasing our veterans, right, to prosecute them for things that may have happened during a war. I mean, I've never been to war, but I would imagine if you're in a combat situation, you're under a lot of pressure.
Yep.
And sometimes things happen, yeah? If someone's done something deliberately and then fair enough. But things happen when you're under that sort of pressure, and you cannot be thinking to yourself, if you're about to pull the trigger, am I going to get prosecuted for doing this when I get back home? And I don't see now how he can be Prime Minister of his country when he's in charge of the armed forces, and he may be sending people into a war situation after doing what he's been doing with his mate Lord Hermer. I think he's an absolute disgrace. I think the whole Labour Party, the way they treat veterans in this country, if a man or a woman goes to fight for their country, they should be given what they need when they need it when they come back. They shouldn't have to fight for anything.
No, exactly. Yeah. Look, we've had this for many, many years. I mean, I remember the Iraq War. Remember when soldiers were actually asking their families, can you get me a flak jacket? Because I haven't even got a decent flak jacket. Barry, thank you for that. Another very heartfelt call. Philip Ingram, your response to that?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the Gulf War. In Iraq, the last Labour Party sent our troops out there without flak jackets and without the right uniforms, because the uniforms had been sold to Saddam Hussein beforehand.
Good Lord. But, I mean, was it any better under the Tories?
No, because the cuts are still there, and we're still driving around in vehicles that were procured in the 1950s, and we still don't have any artillery. The capability doesn't exist for the modern battle space.
And that capability is also about the safety of our troops.
Oh, it is the safety of our troops, but our troops are there to provide safety for the whole of society. So the whole of society is not safe because of various government policies.
Very good point. Thank you for that. Very much appreciate that. Lots more to talk about, lots more topics coming up, including benefits Britain, and indeed also going to be talking to the Middle East expert up next about this Trump threat to Tehran. What does that actually mean? What could happen? And how will it affect us? That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. So 11:35, let's turn our attention to that, that chilling threat from Donald Trump on his Truth Social post yesterday to the leaders in Tehran. He's talked about his beautiful armada of warships ready to attack. There's a nuclear deal. What does this actually mean? What is likely to happen? Well, let's talk to journalist and Middle East expert Emily Schrader, who joins us now. Good morning to you, Emily.
Hi, great to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, what did you make of this post on Truth Social talking about this beautiful armada, which we know is fleet heading towards, closer to Iran from the Southern Ocean and this threat to attack?
Well, we've seen a lot of rhetoric from Donald Trump, as we usually do. We've seen him call for support for protesters, encourage them to continue to go to the streets. And unfortunately, there's been well over a week since he made that threat. And we have seen since then tens of thousands of Iranians who were slaughtered in the streets. Now, I'm pleased to see that the White House has continued to maintain the position that there is no strike that's off the table. They've continued to send assets to the Middle East. And I think that the statements of President Trump are a positive thing when it comes to the mullahs. We know that they are going to continue these executions. They have not stopped. And that pressure needs to continue to be applied. Now, it not only needs to be applied, it needs to be implemented. And I think that's the problem that a lot of Iranians are having now. I mean, they're literally begging in the streets for President Trump to intervene.
Well, that's it. He said, and this is the thing, there are two different things, aren't there? There's the nuclear threat and the saber rattling from the Iranian regime against Israel, other allies in the Middle East, the funding of terrorism abroad, and the threats to blatant, open threats to destroy America. And we're the little Satan, of course, alongside. Well, I can never remember. Are we the little or medium-sized Satan, whether it's Israel or depending on the latest rhetoric? That's very different from the threat that Iran poses to its own people, the young people who've been on the streets, and the tens of thousands who've been on the streets. How does this armada of warships help them when the president said, go out on the streets, we will not allow protesters to be killed en masse by this regime, we will help. And then help came there none.
Well, I think they actually are the same thing at the end of the day, because the problem here isn't just the nuclear threat. Of course, that is one of the threats, but we're talking about a regime that for 47 years has maintained a genocidal position, not only towards the state of Israel, but towards the entire West.
Yeah.
That is the entire foundation upon which the Islamic Republic of Iran is founded. And so when we're talking about U.S. action against the Islamic Republic, it's not just about the nuclear issue. It's also about the ballistic missile buildup that they have been carrying out just since June even. It's about their sanctions evasions through China and through other nations like Russia. It's about their illicit weapons trade. It's about their support for terror proxies that have killed countless troops, U.S. troops even, in the Middle East. It's about the Houthis, who have disrupted global shipping, another proxy of the Islamic Republic. They are a global source of instability. And that is the reason that the United States is threatening to carry out action against the Islamic Republic, but also the reason that they should.
Well,
take
I
action
was
against
just
the
going to
Islamic
say,
Republic.
I mean, you can't make threats. Iran's making such blatant, open threats to, death to America, Israel. I mean, sorry. You don't get to say that and not face consequences. But here's the thing. The president claimed, last year, we've dealt with that nuclear threat, those big, beautiful bombs that went into that nuclear facility in the mountains. That's all dealt with. And now he's saying about we need to deal with that nuclear capability. Did he or did he not deal with that at the time?
I think he dealt with it for the time, but in the long term, we knew, at least in Israel, we knew that this was going to continue to be a problem. Not only the proxy issue, the terror support, but also the nuclear program, because remember, they had approximately 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium that they had already stored, that they had already moved, and we haven't received answers. The IAEA has demanded also updates on what the status is of that, where that is physically, and of course, the Islamic Republic is being evasive on that, because that's what they do when it comes to this nuclear program.
Here's the issue for a lot of people, which is, and I know we know a lot of American people, and I think a lot of people in Britain as well, will just say, look, Iran's a problem. We don't like this regime. It's killing people. It's making threats against our allies, etc., funding terrorism, all of that. But what's the alternative? If you get rid of them, what do you get in return? And we've seen what happens in Iraq. We've seen what's happened in Afghanistan. We didn't get involved in Syria. That didn't work out too well. Maybe it is now. We don't know. I think there's a lot still on the table there. But is it, we see what happened in Libya, a completely and utterly lawless state. Would have we been better off to have kept Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi and others in power? There's a totally fair argument for the West that we might have been. So, what is the alternative to the Tehran regime?
I think what we're seeing right now for the first time is a united opposition. We've seen more support than ever for the Crown Prince in exile, Reza Pahlavi. That's who they're chanting for in the streets. But further than that, I think from the perspective of the West, Reza Pahlavi is someone who is a pro-Western, pro-democracy figure, who has spent much of his life in the West, who is a patriot, who supports and wants better relations with the Western world for the country of Iran, and who wants to see the country truly succeed. Beyond that, he has also been working on a transition plan. We're not talking about someone who wants to come in and have a straight monarchy. We're talking about someone who wants a constitutional monarchy.
There's an awful lot of rose-tinted spectacles about the Shah of Iran, his father, before he was deposed in '79. This was a pretty nasty autocratic regime.
This isn't something that Reza Pahlavi has ever advocated for. He's advocated for constitutional monarchy and for the voice of the people to be heard his entire life, not just right now. And that's something I believe the West should take advantage of. They should use this as an opportunity to support a more stabilizing force in Iran. We also have to remember that Iran's history isn't the same as the Arab world, Libya, Iraq, any of those situations. This is a people who had a very modern society prior to '79 and who have demonstrated perhaps more than any other single group of people in the world that they do not want this regime. How many people have to die before the West is going to stop propping up the Islamic Republic of Iran?
And that is the thing. And just finally, to leave it on that. I mean, again, we shouldn't, this is a major issue for an awful lot of people. Well, I mean, apparently not those who protest on the streets about someone dying in Gaza, but they're not that bothered, it turns out, about people dying on the streets of Tehran. Not an issue for them. Remarkably quiet, fallen on under something heavy, can't reach their phones like Greta and others. But no flotillas, interestingly. In terms of the numbers we've got, I mean, we've got some figures that are coming out, 12,000, 20,000, was it 30,000? Was that just over a couple of days, 8th and 9th of January? Do we have any real idea? Because we know that Israel certainly has had extraordinary intelligence of what is going on. I mean, in terms of the attacks they've launched on Israel and the help on Iran and the help they've given the Americans, their tentacles are extraordinarily good in Iran. What sort of numbers are we talking about in terms of the actual people who've been slaughtered on the streets, those who've been executed subsequently, those who were injured, and those who are imprisoned?
So we have seen a varying number of reports. We were looking at 12,000 was the most credible that was reported. I've heard from every single person that I've spoken to on the ground, from witnesses, people who took part in protests, individuals who were injured, as well as medical staff that I spoke to. All of them have said the numbers are significantly higher than anything that's been reported, even those higher numbers that were in the range of 30 to 40,000, the most recent that we've seen. We've also seen credible reports come from several different news sources just in recent days, citing more than 30,000 casualties. I think it's likely that the number is somewhere between 30 and 50. But again, I'm still hearing from sources on the ground that I'm speaking to, they believe it's much higher. And in terms of who was on the streets, we're talking about millions of Iranians. Yeah. So this is a massive number, and I'm not sure we'll ever know because they cut off the internet for more than 20 days. And even now, it's only being restored sporadically and through certain individual users.
And they are listening in. I know people who've got family in Iran, and they're very, very clear. They can hear the clicks and in automated voices that absolutely there is. It is not safe to have a conversation with someone in Iran at this current time for their own safety.
Yes, absolutely. It's a dire situation with the internet and not just the internet, but the entire situation for the people of Iran who are really being effectively held hostage by the Islamic Republic.
One of the things I find absolutely extraordinary is the defence of a lot of the mainstream media here. BBC, they've got literally, Iran, Persia. They've actually got people, who got expertise, and they didn't cover these protests, they didn't cover these deaths. Massively obsessed with a couple of people being shot in Minnesota. Not so bothered about 30 to 50,000 people being executed on their streets as pro-democracy activists in Iran. But what their arguments was, look, we haven't got people on the ground and it's very difficult to get the figures, and we can't verify these figures. But they've been happily for the last few years taking the figures of the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza as absolute, gospel from God every single time in the middle of a war zone, and those figures down to the last dozen people, absolutely 100% factually treating those as true. But apparently in Iran, completely different.
Well, I think, again, we're seeing the utter hypocrisy from the BBC, which is also dubbed Ayatollah BBC by many Iranians for their long-standing support for Khomeini at the beginning during the Islamic Revolution, and now Khamenei. So this is not surprising at all. We know that the BBC has a clear bias when it comes to this issue. We're not sure why. It's been different people at different times, but it has a tradition that has continued and is continuing now with the revolution in Iran as well. So, we'll see what happens with that, but they're not the only ones. I mean, I saw CNN also did a report from inside Iran spewing the complete talking points of the Islamic Republic itself. Everything is fine here. Nothing's wrong. Things are working well. The internet's great. Like, that's the kind of messaging we're hearing from people who are on the ground reporting in Iran. But you're absolutely right about BBC being laughably absurd with this excuse that they don't have sources on the ground. First of all, they do. I myself have sources on the ground in terms of my reporting. So certainly the BBC does. Absolutely. They just don't want to report what's being heard. Absolutely. And we've seen the same thing, a lot of censorship and a lot of minimization of the person, as I mentioned before, that the Iranians are calling for, which is the Crown Prince in exile.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Emily Schrader, great to talk to you, Middle East expert journalist. Thank you for that. Philip Ingram, your response?
Nodding along to all of it. Emily's talking complete common sense and everything else. And it's good to hear her assessment that there is effectively a government in waiting that can come in and start to take over, and that they've been planning this for quite some time. And a constitutional monarchy, of course, that's what we have in the UK. would work very well indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, and surely it's got to be better than a government that is, literally executing people on the streets. I just think it's absolutely shameful for Donald Trump to promise that help, which led to more people going out on the streets, and then not to bring it. And I also think what's more shameful is the people who care about what happens in Gaza, but not about what happens in Iran. But also the people who for some reason think that that some sort of regime change in Iran would be awful, because same with like Maduro in Venezuela, because it's outrageous, because we shouldn't be going into sovereign states. This is in no way a legitimate regime. They've made threats to us, to the West, to their own people. I'm sorry, I have no moral issue with this, but I'm pretty sure Keir Starmer could find a human rights lawyer who would have a problem with it. 11:47 is the time. Up next, going to talk about benefits Britain. That's up next. This is Talk.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingham still with me. Delighted to be joined now by Justin Urquhart-Stewart. He's an economist, of course, you know him as the chairman of the Regional Investment Platform. A very good morning to you, Justin.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Let's talk about Benefits Britain, one of your favourite topics, I'm sure. But Keir Starmer has vetoed plans, we are told, for a... sounds very decisive of him, doesn't it? He's vetoed plans for a fresh attempt to reform Britain's welfare system because they want to basically avoid another confrontation with Labour MPs. And this is the issue. They tried a pathetic attempt to cut $5 billion off the welfare bill involving disability benefits. I thought it was the wrong cut, actually, because it was actually cutting the money disability claimants would get, as opposed to cutting the number of people who could get disability benefits who didn't need them, which would seem to me to be the obvious thing to do. They were basically got a rebellion from the backbenchers. By the way, any British Prime Minister on the Labour benches, with this Labour backbench, wouldn't be able to get anything through. So he's decided they're not going to try anything until later in this Parliament. But the reality is they're not going to do it ever, are they?
It was so stupid. We're living way beyond our means. And here you had a couple of bills we're going to go through, which are cutting, as you say, $5 billion. Now, look at the overall budget for social protection. You're talking about over $400 billion. Yeah. And by the way, that's more than our entire income tax take, just on the one area alone, let alone health service, defence, and any of those other areas.
And also, by the way, crucially, it wasn't cutting the bill by $5 billion. The bill was going to go up. It's just it wasn't going to go up by quite as much. It was going to go up by that much, minus $5 billion. I mean, that was the best they could offer.
I mean, this is just through trying to do a Canute and try and stop the tides coming up any further. It's coming anyway, and you're going to find yourself in more difficulty. And you're raising that debt even higher. Remember now, our debt interest is over 100 billion. And compare that with the defence budget, between 50 and 60 billion. It used to be roughly the same. But with what we've had with some clever person actually making sure a proportion of our debt is now index linked, so when inflation goes up, we pay more.
Yay!
Another good idea from Gordon Brown there. And so we're in a position where you're not running this economy responsibly to be able to balance your books. What you're doing is just a debt management issue based on your backbenchers' revolt. We're being run by politics for politics, not actually in terms of the welfare of the country, the future welfare.
But again, what's also fascinating is, Labour, it's clue in the name. It's supposed to be the party of the working class, and the people who are most horrified by the welfare dependency in this country are people who are the working class, who are living in the same streets, living next door to people who, when they're getting up for work, at 6 o'clock in the morning to go and undercross, are living next door to people who are sitting at home all day doing sod all, getting pretty much the same income.
Yes, so should be creating more jobs. And I don't mean government jobs. We know where these jobs can be from. The largest employer in this country, and I'm sorry to go on about it, but smaller companies. We're really good at setting these up. They're the people who employ, and guess who hasn't been recruiting over the past 2 years because of national insurance, put a tax on jobs? They've stopped. And so you're going to see more of that, as you're going to see some pain coming through with the increase on, we're seeing business rates, and although there's been some amelioration for some of the pubs, frankly, not a lot. No. And what's that going to mean? And you only have to go out for a meal somewhere and you'll suddenly notice my meal's taking longer to get here. There are less people working here. And so you're actually ruining your own economy. Get people working.
But also pubs and restaurants aren't going to, hospitality and other businesses aren't going to do well, include shops and everyone else, if people haven't got the money. And they haven't got the money because they're finding it difficult to make ends meet. I mean, it's all, but so much of it does come back down to the taxes. And we were talking to Tom Kerridge yesterday about the pub situation. So much of the costs of running a pub are taxes.
And there's one fundamental element to this. Remember, wealth allows you to be able to create, to have more tax. Putting tax up does not create wealth. It's the wrong way round. So it doesn't matter which side of which party you're on, encourage the economy to grow, create more wealth, and lo and behold,
the Prime Minister apparently, even whilst kowtowing to Xi Jinping in China, has a steely focus on growth and the cost of living here in the UK. But we don't seem to have any policies that suggest that. But again, the key thing is, we want to have a limit on legal and illegal immigration in this country. Well, you can only do that if businesses can find people to work, and they need those people who are currently on benefits claiming they're too anxious on a Monday morning to work, to be out looking for work and understanding you're going to actually have to turn up every day. This old-fashioned idea of doing what your boss tells you to do in return for the money that you live on. I mean, mind-blowing concept, but it's worked for most of us for most of our lives. But the reality is we can't afford to have millions and millions of people on pensions for 30 years and millions of people on welfare for their entire lives.
This is irresponsible government, because what you should be doing actually is making sure you're planning for the future. We don't do any planning for the future.
We don't plan for next week.
No, well, exactly. We'd like to say plan for the next election, but I don't know when that's going to be. But obviously you're in a situation now where we can grow this economy. Everyone's saying we don't know how to grow it. Yes, we do. We know the levers that are there. It doesn't cost a lot. You can actually have enterprise investment schemes which work. And throughout the country, we know those hotspots are those high-tech hotspots which actually grow and will actually employ people.
But wouldn't we just do better just by leaving businesses alone and not punishing them? That would be the key thing. Can I just throw another stat with you there? This is something the Scottish Conservative Party is they're blaming not just the Labour Party in England and in Wales, but the Scottish Conservative Party blaming it's really hotting up for those Scottish elections in May, as well as local elections here in England where I am, and also in the Welsh senators as well. But they're saying that actually SNP just as bad. They're saying benefits claimants in Scotland, a parent with 3 children, could receive the same amount of money as a person earning a £56,000 salary. They could take home nearly 42 grand a year through a combination of their welfare payments, either from the government in the Westminster or their devolved welfare payments. And basically they're saying, it's simply not worth anyone's while to work with that level of benefits. And that's the reality, isn't it?
It is, and you look at the calculations they were doing here. They were saying actually the equivalent of that, if you had a salary, would be £56,000. Now, how many people in Scotland actually earn £56,000?
Apparently, only 15%.
15% is ridiculous. So, where shall I go so I don't actually do any work and get paid for it? I shall go back to Scotland.
But we've got the same issue in England and in Wales. But the answer from the left is always, do you want the children to suffer? The same argument I would give when it comes to things like the two-child benefit cap, an extra £3,500 a year for parents who don't work, who are by the way, they are mostly not working and certainly not working full-time, is that, that's down to the parents. Don't have kids you can't afford. And if you're having another kid, maybe you need to work a few extra hours, like everyone else does.
Oh, absolutely, and plan that properly for it. So people, we always get to hear, those are my rights. Okay, what are your obligations? Your obligations are to work and pay tax and do your bit towards society. If you want to go into a fast breeder and produce more children, as you say, that's your affair, by all means. But why should we pick up the extra costs for all of that? So these figures are frightening when you actually look at it. Because remember, we've only got three sources of major income. You've got actually this income tax, you've got coming through on that, you've got VAT, and you've got national insurance. Even corporation tax is much, much smaller than that. Those are the three areas. And we're way beyond that now. We have to cut this back, not necessarily overnight, a plan to actually get it to neutral. And we did get it to neutral under Mrs. Thatcher. Am I allowed to use that word still? Where actually there was a headline in the Times that actually said, what is there a future for a gilts market? Because they no longer needed to borrow. It was shrinking.
Oh,
and
bless them. Bless them. Justin Urquhart's chair, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Always appreciate you joining us. Philip Ingram's been listening to all of that. It is absolutely mind-boggling, isn't it? And this whole sort of hand-wringing, all these poor people, have to give them more welfare, you can't cut anything. When you're taking money, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul in lots of these cases.
Oh, very much so. And we need to start to force people to take some responsibility for what it is that they're doing.
And their own choices in life.
And their own choices in life. And,
then they'll bleat on about a woman, for instance, she's been raped and therefore... Sorry, this is not most people who are having a third child.
It's a very small percentage, and there are a small number of people who are extremely deserving of support, and they're not getting the support that they need because it's going to the spongers. And I think those that are routinely getting benefits should be forced to work for their benefits.
Local village hall, exactly. You're going to still have to get up at 7 o'clock, so you may as well
clean the graffiti off the walls.
Local village halls, people on the benefits. Literally, you have to come and explain why you're on the benefits. Sorry,
and you dig the weeds up, you clear the litter up, you clear the graffiti up.
You don't want to do that. Absolutely fine. You don't get paid.
Correct.
Same as a job. It's old-fashioned. I'm with you all the way. Absolute workfare all the way. Come the revolution, guys, when I'm in charge. Just saying.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Empress. Why do people keep demoting me? Empress. Anyway, holding out for Empress. Midday, you can take the latest headlines. We're going to be talking to the son of the Hong Kong activist, pro-democracy activist, who's been held behind bars, facing a life sentence by the Chinese simply for protesting for democracy, the rights that we have here. Why on earth is the Prime Minister kowtowing to the man who's done that to him? We'll be talking to his son up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you are listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Thank you also to Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer, still joining me in the studio for the next hour. Lots coming up, including in a couple of moments I'll be speaking to Sebastian Lai. He's the son of the jailed British citizen, crucially a British citizen and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai from Hong Kong. He's called on the Prime Minister here not to reconcile with China until his father, who is facing a lifetime behind bars, currently in solitary confinement, is actually freed. We're also going to be talking why a police force is letting suspects choose their gender rather than recording them as what they actually are, and you're male or female. And schools are now being told to stop sending suspended pupils home. Also some breaking news the last couple of moments. The Work and Pensions Secretary, Pat McFadden, who I always think looks like an extra in a horror film, rather scary looking man, he has just made a statement about the WASPy women. These are the women who basically got caught in sort of a double whammy of their pension age rising as a result of women's pension age being equalled with men's pension age, but also going up as well when they increased. So they basically, I think, lost 6 years of pension. It was going to happen to someone at some point, unfortunately. A lot of them said they weren't given warnings in advance. Though, of course, this was announced repeatedly in the media. They said they weren't aware when they made plans for their pensions. Big campaign. Labour Party talked again beforehand about helping them. When they came into power, they realised we were looking at, I think it was around, was it around the £13 billion mark or something, that this was going to cost huge sums of money. And it's just been announced the WASPy women will not receive a compensation. They said that they would have to investigate. To compensate, they have to investigate the individual circumstances of women. It would not be practical to set up a compensation scheme. We have so many unfunded compensation schemes for those who are victims of, the infected blood scandal, and we've got the post office scandal, you name it. None of this stuff is funded. Everyone promises a good game, but they don't actually fund it out of, let's face it, your and my taxes. And the WASPy women are not going to be getting that compensation scheme, as we already had expected would be the case. As I say, Philip Ingram is still joining me, and I know you've met my next guest, who is the son of a man who really should have been the major topic of debate and conversation when our Prime Minister kowtowed here met with Xi Jinping, the President of China, overnight. It was, we're told, an 80-minute meeting. Well, aren't we very, very lucky that it was? It was only expected to last 40 minutes, but that's an awfully long way to go, isn't it, to just get an 80-minute meeting with the President of China, and as far as we can tell, other than some visa-free travel for up to 30 days for British people travelling to China, pretty much we've got nothing else in return. Prime Minister says he did raise human rights concerns with the Chinese President, but we don't know how detailed that conversation was. Unlikely to be very detailed. Well, let's talk right now to Sebastian Lai, who is the son of Jimmy Lai, who is being held by the Chinese on charges of being, a pro-democracy activist, numerous other trumped-up charges, and faces life behind bars. Good afternoon to you, Sebastian.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. There'll be a lot of people who don't know much about your dad, who born in China, became a very successful businessman in Hong Kong, very, very staunch, very prominent pro-democracy activist, about what has happened to him, what he's charged with, and what his life is like right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So, as you alluded to, he arrived as a child refugee, escaping communist China to then British Hong Kong. He was 12. He had nothing, but as he always would tell me, that it was one of the best days of his life, because even though he had nothing, he knew that in British Hong Kong he had freedom. And he became tremendously successful in business, founding a clothing brand called Giordano, which is a kind of a precursor to Uniqlo. Then the Tiananmen Square massacre happened of 89. And he knew that he had to do something to defend the freedoms that gave him so much. So he started a newspaper on the back of that called Apple Daily, with the belief that with information, people had choice, and with choice, people had freedom.
And this was all within the context, wasn't it, that they were looking at within the next decade, Hong Kong being handed back to the Chinese?
Exactly. So everybody started auto-censoring before the handover, and my father knew that that's why it was so important to have a media group that didn't do that wasn't afraid to criticize the powerful, the tycoons, the triads and whatnot. And obviously that got him in all kinds of trouble. I still remember our house being firebombed. There was an occasion actually when in Taiwan when a dog was skinned and pinned out our door. But
goodness.
It's absolutely horrible. But throughout it all, my father and his journalists courageously printed the day's news every single day, and the people of Hong Kong had a choice at the newsstand to have a voice that wasn't spoke truth to power, wasn't cowed. Yeah. And then 2020, the national security law was passed, which essentially meant that Hong Kong no longer had the rule of law. They had a mechanism to go above of rule of law, and my father knew that he was going to be one of the main targets. Many people told him to leave,
and he could have. It's the interesting thing. He's a very wealthy man.
Yeah,
he was already by then your family British citizen. He could have left. He could have found safety and carried on living a very nice, easy life in the West.
Yeah, there are actually many occasions in Dad's life where he could have chosen the comfortable route, the wrong route, I think, but the comfortable one, where he'd be much wealthier, much more comfortable somewhere else instead of in a Hong Kong maximum security prison. But look, he would always say Hong Kong is so poor, the only thing they have is money. Right? He knew the importance of freedom. And for him, he knew that by leaving, not only is he leaving his principles behind, but more importantly, he'd be leaving his people behind. Mm-hmm. And by staying, he knew that he could act as a lightning rod for the persecution to come. Yeah. So as he says himself, in an interview right before he was arrested, he's like, look, if I leave, I live comfortably, but if I stay, I live meaningfully.
Yeah, I mean, very powerful words. I mean, he's been in and out of prison, numerous different charges. In December, he's been in prison since 2021.
2020, actually.
2020. Yeah. I know they kept hoping he was going to get some sort of bail. Different charges brought. He was convicted. The latest conviction let's face it, not a meaningful court process as we would understand it in the West. And his latest charges, this is sedition, and this is working with foreign forces as well.
And collusion. With foreign forces. Look, this is a trial that has internationally been, this international outcry. There's allegations of one of the witnesses being tortured. Obviously, there's no jury. There's 3 national security law judges. And all they found throughout this whole trial, this allegation of colluding with foreign forces. Well, collusion suggests some nefarious benefits. Well, all they found after 5 years of rotting through his stuff, of treating him, essentially torturing him, they found that this nefarious benefit was democracy in Hong Kong. Big reveal.
Yes. Yeah, but also he was meeting with politicians openly. It was being publicised. Yes. He was very clear about his views. But he's yet to be sentenced. But the sentence will be life behind bars. And even though we've got, the UK government, the European Parliament, I know senior figures in the American administration have spoken out, that is where he remains. Tell us what his health is like, because there's been a lot of concern. He's now 78 years old, and my goodness me, he's got the heart of a lion, but he has the body of a 78-year-old man. And how bad is the treatment he's getting in this Chinese prison?
It's heartbreaking. I mean, you mentioned life imprisonment, but even if he gets 5 years, that's basically the same. It's a death sentence. He's being kept in what is essentially a concrete box, 60 square feet. He doesn't get natural light. He's in solitary confinement, so he's 14 days of solitary confinement is prolonged solitary confinement. He's been there for 1,800 days. I think everybody remembers, COVID, for example, when you you were in your own little room, and that's in your own home, right? So it's torture. There's no other word for it. And he went in. He already had diabetes, but now because of the conditions he's being kept in, he now has heart issues. I think everybody knows someone of his age, and if you put someone like that in this little concrete box, and summers it goes up to 30, 40 degrees. Look, the chances of survival are extremely slim.
I mean, I know I've been reading, talking about he's got rotting teeth, his fingernails falling off, he's barely allowed outside. for exercise, not even a full hour when he does get outside. I mean, these are deliberately harsh conditions. The Chinese know what they're doing, and a lot of this is about basically a statement to the people of Hong Kong. Look what we can do to the very rich, powerful man that you've all heard of, and we get away with it. So do you want to try your hand too? This is about a warning to others as well as a punishment to him. What do you make then of people, quite literally, kowtowing to the Chinese president? Xi Jinping agreed to meet our Prime Minister, who travelled all the way to China for, an amazing 80 minutes. We're told, these issues have been raised, but in what way? We've given in, you can have your Chinese embassy at a crucially, security-wise, crucial part of central London, overseeing, basically next to these crucial communication cables for our city, basically agreeing to pretty much anything in return for cheap imports, and now visa-free travel for British nationals, business or tourism to the country. What do you make of foreign leaders like ours going along, bending the knee to the man who's imprisoned your father?
Look, as you alluded to, my father is in jail for his courage. That's the price of courage in Hong Kong, the price of standing up for freedom. But if my father can do it, if someone, an individual can do it, then so can a country and its prime minister, his country. And his prime minister. And I think there is a lot of worries around our relationship with China, national security. And I think for many people in the UK, it feels like we've given so much. You mentioned the embassy, this visit as well. And I think most people don't really see what we have received in return. Yes. If we're talking about a relationship, it's not one way, it's two ways, right? And, it would take, if we've given so much, the least they could do is put a 78-year-old man who is at very high risk of dying at any point, on a plane back home here to London. This isn't a massive ask from our part.
But there's no reason for Xi Jinping to agree to that, because he knows we're not going to kick up a fuss. What do you make of this idea that in the West, and again, this was happening under David Cameron and even before then, this idea that we need to do more trade with China, will open up communications, and like we had with Russian, Eastern Europe, the glasnost and perestroika, that this will open up the country and they'll join the West, because why wouldn't you want to do that? How seriously should we take that as a policy when, as we know, Xi Jinping only the last week has basically managed to deal with his one remaining possible challenger, a childhood friend who's a senior military, senior general in the army, basically say, like, I am now the supreme ruler, absolute for life of this country. So is trade going to be the way we oust this guy?
Well, look, I think whatever. Look, obviously China's the second biggest economy. I'm not here to say that we shouldn't trade with them, right? But I think Lord Patton was the one who said, look, China trades the same way as everybody trades, right? It's out of self-interest. Yeah. That's as simple as that. That's the math, right? So this idea that we would trade our freedom, our citizens, our human rights, for any perceived economical benefit is not only wrong, it's also completely illogical.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think this idea of warming relationships, if they can't even do something so human, so right, and so rational, actually, because there's direct impact to China's reputation and to Hong Kong's economy, keeping my father in there. Yeah. Then what can we? What can we expect from that relationship?
But also, crucially, he is a British citizen. He's a British citizen, and in terms of how much the government, how much the Foreign Office, how much contact they've had with him, they've had with you as family members. How involved are they, or do they just sort of say the right things, do the right things, and don't make any effort? Don't make a fuss because it'll create bad relations. Or are they behind the scenes taking action that we don't often hear about?
I think there's, at least the ones that I've met, there's a lot of people in the Foreign Office that are, that wants to see this happen, right? I think a lot of people, on a personal level, are incredibly moved about my father's story. In the end of the day, I think it's heroic, right? What he's done, and I think a lot of people don't want to see someone like him die in prison. I think in the end of the day, it's about putting conditionalities.
Yeah.
It's saying, look, if you want warming of relationships with the United Kingdom, then the least you could do is send him over. And to your point, he's a British citizen. He's only a British citizen. He has no other nationality. In fact, the United Kingdom was the first state to recognise him as a human, because he went to Hong Kong without papers, and the first time any state recognised him was the United Kingdom. And he's sacrificed a lot of his life, much of his wealth, to further these freedoms, to uphold this promise in the joint declaration between United Kingdom and China. So I think if you're going to give anybody a citizenship, isn't that the best possible outcome in some sense?
Yeah, right? Quite a lot better than a lot of the people we have been giving citizenship to. Sebastian, I can't thank you enough for talking to us. Really appreciate your time. Your father is an absolute lion. It's extraordinary, and I really hope we do better by him and your family, because it's a source of national shame that we don't. That's Sebastian Lai, son of Jimmy Lai, basically still being held behind bars and facing a life sentence and dying behind bars if we don't, force China into action. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, incredibly impressive young man himself, is Sebastian. But I mean, what Jimmy Lai has done, and again, he's not a household name in the UK, we know that, but he's incredibly famous in Hong Kong. And again, you've got to really admire people. He put his money where his mouth is. He didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. We need more people like that. And pushing for democracy. I don't think we should ever give Hong Kong back to the Chinese. I thought that was insane. And we've lived to rue the day. We know what China is. They told us who they were. They showed us who they were, and then they acted who they were. Kowtowing to this man in Beijing when he's holding a British citizen in conditions like that for the crime of being pro-democracy and freedom, that's a national embarrassment.
It's more than that. Not only China are sticking effectively two fingers up at us. They signed an international agreement where they weren't going to change the one country, two regimes rule whenever they took over Hong Kong. They did. Yeah. And we have done nothing about it.
We can't do anything about it, would be the answer.
We can. There's quite a lot.
We're not going to seize Hong Kong back.
No. Action doesn't necessarily mean military action and all the rest of it. There's an awful lot of Chinese come into universities, come into the UK and visitors and all the rest of it. A very simple action would be, until Jimmy Lai is released, we will give no more visas for anyone to come and study in the UK.
None of your students.
Go away.
Tell you what would be a bonus for that.
Start throwing them out.
And you can't fund our universities either. Stop buying them up. Here's another thing. Wouldn't that be great? Because all of our young people who get 3 grade A levels in science subjects will be able to get training as medical students, which they're currently not able to. Just to let you know, the Prime Minister, the Downing Street, has issued a statement saying, we said Keir Starmer had a substantive conversation about the issue of human rights abuses during his meeting with Xi Jinping. He told journalists already that he raised the issue of Jimmy Lai. It's now understood this wasn't a fleeting moment, but a substantive discussion which the Chinese leadership engaged with proportionately. But I'm sorry, but apparently this is the reason why the meeting. You had a 40-minute meeting that ended up being an 80-minute meeting, and you think you had a substantive conversation. I mean, we just talked about Jimmy Lai, just some of the basics there. That was 15 minutes.
Yeah, and
You're telling me there's rubbish.
We've only just scratched the surface of it.
Yeah, what a load of abject nonsense. It's embarrassment, it really is. 12:20 is the time. Your thoughts on everything we're talking about, whatever you want to talk about, at home, abroad, Keir Starmer, and everything he's doing. I've had it with him. I'm done with it. I mean, I was never a fan. Again,
but it gets worse and worse.
I've said it before, and I've said it so many times, and I'm really sorry to keep repeating this. I knew he would be bad. I didn't in a million moments think that he would be this bad a Prime Minister, but yes, he keeps sinking to new lows. 12:21 is the time. Give us a call to have your say. 0344 499 1000. That's the number to get in touch, in particular about Keir Starmer apparently defending cozying up to China on this trip, despite the fact we've just spoken to the son of a man who we should be defending. By the way, stop worrying about getting this El Fattah bloke out of the Egyptian prison, which apparently was the #1 priority of the Foreign Office. It is an Egyptian guy who claimed, I don't know how he was given British citizenship. This guy is a British citizen. End of. Get him out of prison. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks. That's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel.
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning, welcome back. Good afternoon, sorry, welcome back to the show. 12:23 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Philip Ingram's still with me as well. Let's get to your calls though. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say. Oh, and your text message. I haven't been reading out there. I'm getting very bad because your calls are so good. I'm asking you about the Prime Minister going off to China. Charlie has said he's had to travel with a burner phone as MI5 warned them the communist regime would attempt to bug them. This is just another example of the dear leader's treachery to his people in his country. Keir Starmer says David is a puppet of the Chinese state. He'll do whatever Xi tells him. James says, I just despair. Adrian says he's dancing with the puppet master. Sean says, very simply, I've got one word, traitor. Sal says, as long as we get cheap stuff, I'm happy. But they'll carry on selling us cheap stuff anyway. We don't have to give anything back for that. Bootlicker, says Gary. They're two peas in a pod. Ruth says China isn't the economic powerhouse it pretends to be to foreign investors and weak British politicians. Their population is collapsing and the economy is in freefall. Well, the economy is growing at a damn sight faster rate than ours. But yeah, there are lots of big question marks about the Chinese economy. Douglas says a useful idiot socialist goes to buddy up with a communist dictator. What could possibly go wrong? And dictators need to stick together, says Robert. Mikey says they're two cheeks of the same dictatorial backside. Yeah, I think we've got the cut of your jib today when it comes to your thoughts on Keir Starmer. Let's go to Alan, who's on the line in Salford and wants to have his say. Hello, Alan.
Good morning, Julia.
Good afternoon.
Sorry,
I did it too. Don't worry. What do you want to say, my love?
Well, it ceases to amaze me. Well, I won't say amaze me. Disgust me. This Prime Minister of ours. We're now China. We're giving China 72 billion in exports now. Today.
We're not giving them. We're choosing to buy. When you order something on Amazon, you go, "Oh, that's a lot cheaper than." It's because you're getting it from China.
We're buying 72 billion pounds of goods from China. They're buying 30 billion of goods from us. I bet he don't come back with 5 billion. How's that?
No, exactly. Well, Rachel Reeves came back with, I think, less than $1 billion. I mean, it's literally money in the back down the back of the sofa.
Come back with anything.
No. He says they're having talks about tariffs on whiskey, and that they've got a deal on this 30-day visa, and very excitingly, they're going to get the Chinese to look into not allowing all these engines to be used and sold for these dinghies coming across the channel.
Oh, yes, for the dinghies. Well, it's ridiculous, really.
It is.
I'm afraid it's a wonder he's not coming back with a one-in-one from China, isn't it? One in, one out.
Don't give him ideas, Alan. Don't give him ideas.
Well, but can I ask you a really serious question?
Oh God, yeah.
You know this this China spy case.
Yeah.
With these two businessmen. Well, they're not businessmen. They're spies.
Well, no, they never went to court. We need innocent until proven guilty. Come on, we've got
the evidence. Is there any way of bringing this back? The next government, I hope it's reform, who can say, right, I want them back in court to answer these chaps.
Who knows? I mean, who knows? It goes back, does it not? I mean, to what the law is and what the government's position was at the time of the alleged offences. But no, good question, Alan. Thank you for that. Let's go to David now, who's in Gloucestershire. David, you want to talk more about Keir Starmer, but this is in relation to his treatment of veterans and basically every human rights trick under the book being used to basically make sure they just get prosecuted for everything they do.
Well, absolutely, Julia and Philip, and I expect Philip will understand this, but I really do think that this man is a traitor, and that's all the only words you can use. Traitor, traitor. I mean, we used to say it was conspiracy theory, but now it's been proven. That's a fact. To chase veterans in Iraq, with that bloke China who has been proven to be a liar. So what was Starmer and Irma doing. They must have been stitched up with him.
Yep.
And I wouldn't blame the veterans. Well, Philip will have an opinion, but I wouldn't blame the soldiers in this country to put their guns down, all the forces, and say, we will not serve under this man, and go on strike. I know they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But I think
well, look, it's like the armed officers. I mean, certainly in the Met, basically that people just handed in their weapons. They don't get paid extra to be armed officers. And again, when they do their duty and they save themselves, fellow officers, and indeed the public from these basically gang member, gangland shooters, they face prosecution. And again, they're proven not to have done anything wrong, but they have years and years of horrible treatment. We had some news, didn't we, about another one, one of the cases yesterday. I can't remember, there have been so many, there haven't been that many, a handful of them, but I can't remember his name. But it was, this absurd situation where police officers and military are doing their duty to protect us, and then they're facing legal action afterwards.
Well, absolutely, it's disgraceful. I mean, I did read. Well, I heard this morning that they're actually going to drop that case. Well, that should have been an open and shut case.
What was his name? Can anyone remind us of his name? I'll look it up in the break. David, thank you. I mean, look, a lot of people are very angry at Keir Starmer, but he lives in a world where they're not really, they don't like our flag. They don't really like the British people. They don't really like the military. He puts the flags up behind him when he makes the speech now because he knows he has to. But do you think he just genuinely doesn't really approve of these people? Oh, we've lost him. Philip.
Two things in that. One, the British military don't swear allegiance to the government; they swear allegiance to the king, and therefore it's the Crown that does that, and that's why they will not put their arms down. But the other thing is, and more comes out, and I'm going to steal this from an old friend, Richard Williams, former CEO of 22 SAS, who's described Lord Hermer and Keir Starmer's obsession with the European Court of Human Rights and their desire to use it to attack British soldiers and veterans as a fetish. And when fetishists get into things, they go to more and more extreme levels for their own personal pleasure. That's what they're doing.
It is
here.
A fetish.
It's sad and it's dangerous.
I've just remembered the name. Chris Cabba. That is the wrong 'un. The drug-dealing gangland guy, domestic abuser. He'd been implicated and suspected of two shootings in the previous weeks before he was shot dead by police while he was trying to ram his car into police officers who stopped him. But they think he was on the way to another suspected attempted murder or murder. I mean, I'm sorry. And this guy, the guy who was charged, and again, the judge named him, which outrageous, put his family at risk. He was found not guilty, but now there's the police watchdog. Basically, they continue this investigation. The Metropolitan Police Federation said, you've got to stop investigating this guy. I've always said that this man, the one who killed Mark Duggan as well, and the one who killed Chris Cabba, I want to shake both of their hands and say thank you for keeping us safe and getting these wrong uns off the street. So, by the way, yesterday in the news when they were reporting this Chris Cabba story, they keep using that picture of him. He's smiling. Oh, he looks low. I mean, he looks like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. Apart from when he's beating up his pregnant girlfriend. Apart from when he's trying to kill people and ramming his head. They've got pictures of him doing the full gangland thing. They don't use that. They use the smiling nice guy photo, and that's a deliberate choice.
Shame on the Metropolitan Police's chain of command. Shame on the Police Federation for what they're doing. They need to start looking after their members and those that are working for them rather than looking after the criminals. This is just wrong.
And again, we're not talking about mass execution. We're not talking about we're simply talking about police acting in self-defence to do the right thing and then facing prosecution. 12:31 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about the police up next with Danny Shaw as police forces letting suspects basically say what they believe their preferred gender is as opposed to being recorded as what their correct sex is. But also, after all these promises and talk about these police reforms and all of this, the number of police has actually fallen by 1,300 since Labour have come to power. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:33 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and this is the home of common sense, where perhaps we like things like facts. And we certainly think that on official statistics, whether it's the census, whether it's a crime statistic, whether it's in the health service, we should be recording facts rather than complete fiction. And yet another police force, this is the Norfolk Constabulary, has been found to prefer fiction to fact. They've been accused of prioritising ideology over accuracy by allowing detainees to choose their gender. And they've confirmed that, quote, in most cases, unquote, the force recorded the self-identified gender of suspects, which would, of course, lead to a man, 6'4", with a beard, standing there, accused of rape, to say, you know, I'm a woman, my name's Jane, and I identify as a woman. And that statistic will go on the police forms and all our crime statistics as a female committing that crime, which, of course, would be in England legally impossible because you have to be a man to commit rape for obvious reasons. Let's talk about this and other policing stories with Danny Shaw, the policing crime and justice commentator. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Julia. Hi.
I mean, these stories, they break my soul. We hear about them in the health service, we hear about them in various other places, in schools and goodness knows what. But, you know, police should be about facts. In which case, you know, you can't record what someone says here. You can record, if you want to, utterly irrelevantly, record what someone's gender is as well if you want, i.e. whatever they think they are on a Wednesday afternoon. But it should be your name, your date of birth, your address, proof of all these things, by the way, required at some point, and your sex, male or female, shouldn't it?
I think it should, Julia. What I'm a little bit confused about is whether Norfolk Constabulary, along with some other forces, do record your sex as well as your self-assigned gender, whether there are two boxes or just one. I think from their response to this news story that there are two boxes that are recorded. How that ends up on the crime statistics as an offence committed by a male or a female, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but we should be sure. That's the key thing. And anyway, but someone's gender, like, you know, that's like asking, you know, and is your favourite colour blue or green? Tick the box. It's utterly irrelevant to the cold hard data they're supposed to be acquiring at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think this will have a really marginal impact on crime data, to be absolutely honest.
Well, you say that. You said that because there's been quite a lot of evidence that's suggesting, in terms of violent crimes, in terms of sex crimes, that actually, you know, there's such a low number of those crimes committed by women that actually a small percentage of men claiming they're women can actually skew those crime figures. They're probably going to be, you know, universities studying this in years to come. Why was this weird spike for about 20 years in British crime by women?
I don't think there has been any weird spike so far. That I can see. The vast majority of crimes are committed by boys and men.
Yeah.
So look, I think it's an issue. It needs to be addressed and sorted out. I frankly don't think it's the biggest issue in policing at the moment by any stretch.
No.
But clearly it's an anomaly, and the sooner we get complete guidance and everyone's completely clear where they stand, the better. Oh,
absolutely on that. And again, we're waiting from that from the government. Now, you used to be an advisor to Yvette Cooper some years ago. She's now Foreign Secretary, no longer Home Secretary. But I mean, if you were still her advisor when she was Home Secretary, or even just as a senior member of this cabinet, would you be telling her that, like, seriously, get that guidance out, and that guidance should be in line with the Supreme Court and what the ECHR has said?
Well, I think it would absolutely.
The HLC, sorry.
You absolutely want the guidance out as soon as possible. I think it's a responsibility of Bridget Phillipson, I believe.
Yeah.
I think she's the minister responsible for equalities as well as being Education Secretary. So I'm sure she will be aware that this has to happen sooner rather than later. I
think we should all just be happy that someone was actually having to give these details because they'd actually been arrested. That's a very exciting prospect. Surprised anyone's arrested, since we know from recent stats that actually the clear-up rate in most crimes is well, you know, more closer to 5% than anything else, lower than that for some other crimes, and that many police officers don't make a single arrest in any given year. And we've also got very few police officers. The number of police officers has fallen dramatically under Labour According to new official figures, Home Office data has shown that the total number of officers in England and Wales dipped by more than 1,300. That's a fall of just under 1% in the 12 months to September. It's equivalent to more than 3 police officers being lost every day. Now, we've got 145,000 police officers in total on a full-time equivalent, so before then. So it's not a huge loss in terms of those numbers. But didn't Labour say they were going to increase the number of police officers?
No. So I think this is something you've highlighted, and I think it's really important to highlight it. We've got into this situation where it's become a sort of arms race about the number of police officers. Which party can promise more police officers? Oh, Labour are going to promise an extra 5,000. The Tories will promise an extra 10,000. And this is really not the point, Julia. It's what police officers are doing that really counts. You might not know this statistic, but and if you do, perhaps your listeners won't. 12,000 police officers, 12,000 across the country, are not doing frontline policing. They're doing back office roles. And the reason they're doing that is because there's a shortage of civilian support staff. So police officers have been filling those roles, doing jobs, important jobs in policing that helps the police service function, but they are overqualified and equipped.
Why is there a shortage? I did not know that, but why is there a shortage of police?
Because after 2010, there were huge cuts to the police service, not just in officer numbers, but also in civilian staff numbers. That was the Conservative and coalition governments that brought that in. Boris Johnson restored the number of police officers back to the levels roughly they were in 2010 by raising the number by 20,000, so we're roughly back to 2010 levels, but the civilian numbers have not increased by anything like those numbers. There's still a shortfall of civilian support staff.
But they're the people who get a lot of the backroom. They get the backroom stuff done that enables police officers to get on with policing.
Yeah, so you've had this ludicrous situation where police forces had to recruit police officers, and they then were deploying them in back office roles. So I would say what you should be looking at is what are police officers doing? What this government is doing, what Labour's doing, and I do support them on this, is trying to get more officers into police neighbourhoods. By the end of March, there will be an extra 3,000 police officers or community support officers working in neighbourhoods across England and Wales. And by the end of the Parliament, the aim is for 13,000 extra in neighbourhoods doing frontline policing. So I think it's much more important to get the right people doing the right jobs in the right roles rather than focus on this headline figure, which has actually sort of tied chief constables' hats behind their backs.
Seems to me it'd be a good idea if we had some more civilian staff. That seems to be a fairly obvious solution to the problem. Has anyone thought of it? I don't trust any of our chief police officers. They'll probably say they haven't got enough money. But again, depends what they're spending their money and their time on. We had earlier this week, and again, it was all rather sort of just demolished by other big news stories in the headlines of these police reforms announced by Shahban Mahmood, the biggest police reforms in 200 years, etc., etc. I mean, I thought that was rather overplaying it, but taking police forces down from 43 down to 12 and basically creating this new national police sort of, body which is going to be like the British FBI and all of that. Is any of that, A, ever going to happen, and B, is any of that going to mean that we basically prevent more crime or catch more criminals?
Well, I think much of it will happen. I'm not sure everything will happen. I think we will get a new national police service because I think most people accept that the current sort of setup with lots of different organisations and bodies is incoherent and inefficient. I think you may get some police forces merging to smaller ones. Whether you get down to 20 or 12, I'm not sure, because I think there will be local opposition. But I would say this, though, Julia, there is money to be achieved through efficiencies by creating a new national service and by merging some police forces. And if you speak to chief constables, they are on board with that idea. They understand that needs to happen. And they've been saying it for years and years and years. And when you get some efficiencies and you get some savings reinvested into frontline policing, then you'll get more cops able to investigate your crimes, to be able to catch the burglars and the car thieves and the person that's stolen your mobile phone, or the shoplifters. So hopefully you will get better results in the future, but it's not going to happen overnight. But it does need a reorganisation. I agree there's a bit of hyperbole from Shahban Mahmood, 200 years and all the rest of it, but this is a pretty radical blueprint for the future.
Although a lot of it has been tried before, but it's interesting. I mean, she also says she wants to sort of, abolish these non-crime hate incidents, not created by the law, created by the College of Policing. Suella Braverman and Priti Patel before her both tried to, get them to scrap them. They still keep on carrying on.
They didn't. I don't think they did.
They did. They basically said stop recording non-crime hate incidents. They said.
The previous precinct minister, Chris Philp, who's now the Shadow Home Secretary for the Conservatives, actually reintroduced new guidance for non-crime hate incidents just a couple of years ago. So he wasn't trying to scrap them at all.
But before that, Priti Patel and Suella Braverman made very, very clear statements to College Policing, stop doing it.
But they didn't scrap them, though, did they?
No, they didn't, because they didn't. This is my point. The College of Policing and Chief Constables carry on doing it regardless of what anyone says. So Shabana Mahmood saying
they didn't, and you know that, but they didn't.
No. They apparently have no powers to do it because police record whatever police sodding will choose to record.
They can legislate. Of course, they have the powers.
There is no legislation that creates a non-crime hate incident. By definition, it's not a crime.
They can introduce regulations. They can introduce regulations through Parliament, which will basically stop it from happening.
So when Shabana Mahmood doesn't do that, we can blame her.
Yeah, absolutely. Blame her if she doesn't.
I'll take you. You're an expert in this field. I've been told by numerous tourists. One, I've said, why haven't you dealt with this? They've told me to a man and a woman. We tried. We can't get them to stop doing it. They're lying.
It requires a strong approach from the Home Secretary, which you did not get from the previous ones, and that is the reality.
We shall wait and see. Danny Shaw, so good to talk to you as always. Policing, crime and justice commentator there. Philip Ingram, your thoughts on any and all of that?
Well, a couple of things. If you have to legislate to stop chief constables doing something that's stupid, then the chief constables need to wobble their heads.
And they haven't got any money. They haven't got any money.
Exactly, and this is the other thing with money. I'm a fan of this new National Police Service, but I think one of the things that should come away from...
To be a new National Police Force?
Or National Police
Shouldn't
Force.
Shouldn't it be? It's not a service.
It doesn't really matter what's in the name,
as long
as it's carrying the functions out. But a critical element to it would be to take the procurement of police equipment away from each of the different police forces, because there are so many different prices that are paid for police cars, for handcuffs, for body armour, for police
terrible
uniforms,
negotiation.
Because each chief constable wants that pot of money, but each chief constable will refuse to give up that pot of money because that gives them a degree of flexibility.
Yeah.
There are efficiencies to be had across the police force.
Of course there are.
The chief constables, a lot of them don't want it.
No, they're part of the problem. As always, everyone likes to protect their fiefdom, don't they? Yes. Thank you for that. Before we go to a quick break, we're going to be talking about kids who get suspended from school, whether they should be sent home or not. The government says they largely shouldn't be. We're going to take another call. Lots of calls coming in on this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. But David's on the line from the Isle of Wight, wants to talk about the Prime Minister and his former life as a human rights barrister and his treatment of veterans. David, hi. What do you want to say?
Yeah, good morning.
Afternoon. We all think it's morning today. We're terrible. I think we're in hibernation mode in January, aren't we?
I think we are, yes. It's 1:15. Sorry about that. Just my first time, so thanks for taking my call. Just picking up this morning, you and Philip were discussing our friend Mr. Starmer and his harassing of the veterans. And one thing I did pick up was Philip mentioned that anybody that's in the cabinet that's ex-military, need to really search their conscience, if you like. Well, let's start with Mr. Tapp. Mr. Tapp Mike Tapp. He likes to drop in the conversation every time he's interviewed that he's ex-serviceman, ex-military, been there, done got the T-shirt. Well, what does he think about his colleagues and the veterans getting harassed by our leader? I just sort of picked up what Philip said.
Very fair point.
To ring in.
A very, very fair point, David. Thank you for that. You will not be surprised that Philip Ingram was nodding away. Very briefly, Philip.
Yeah, Mike Tapp doesn't like anyone that disagrees with Mike Tapp. Doesn't like anyone that disagrees with Mike Tapp. He's blocked me on social media because I've called him out.
He's a little bit of a diva on social media, isn't he? Do come on and right to reply, Mike Tapp. 12:47 is the time. Up next, should kids who've been behaved so badly at school that they've been suspended be sent home or kept in school? Well, the government says they should be kept in school. We'll talk to a former head teacher to find out what he thinks about that. This is Talk.
and welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:50 is the time. Let's talk about school. I'll take you back, But you remember when Tony Blair came up with this great idea that kids who were basically very badly behaving, even violent in school, should not be expelled? That worked out really well when another 29 kids in the class of 30 basically lost their education as well as that kid. Well, this Labour government has come up with the same madness as well. Schools are going to be told to stop sending suspended pupils home from school under their plan, saying children at school in England will no longer be routinely sent home by default when they get into trouble, as if that happens all the time anyway. You have to do quite a lot to get suspended from school, but they will need to be kept not necessarily in that classroom but in school rather than roaming the streets, possibly becoming involved in crime or just sitting on their phone or at home with their parents, who may well be part of the problem. Is that solution though? Let's talk to Tim Clark. He's a former head teacher. Afternoon to you, Tim.
Afternoon, Julia.
Sorry,
Good to see you.
Mr. Clark, sorry. Sit up straight, everybody. Straighten your tie. The head teacher basically told, look, if their kid is disruptive, if they're violent, you can take them off the premises. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep them at school, but not in the classroom. So presumably they have to find another room for these kids and someone to supervise them. Is that even vaguely practical?
OK, well, it is. I am very worried about this, and I endorse everything you said in your introduction. But I think this is actually a lazy policy, because what it's basically saying, kids are badly behaved, the schools have got to deal with it. And the reason why it's lazy is because so far we've seen no other suggestions or options open to schools. And if what the government was saying, look, we're going to do this for schools, give you these extra staff to look after these difficult kids, give you extra facilities, you said about withdrawing them from lessons, fine, but schools need space to do that. They need staff to supervise them. And this is why, I say, it is a lazy policy. But I just make two or three general points. The first is, I totally endorse your first point. Yes, tens of thousands of kids are suspended. That is worrying. But 9 million kids are not suspended. And they should come first. We need to provide a safe, happy, vibrant environment for them to learn. And if that means a minority need to be removed, either from the lesson or from the school, then so be it. But they have to come first. The second point is that I think, again, this is being lazy on the part of the government. It's very easy to reduce the number of suspensions. You just say you don't do it. The bigger question is, how do you improve their behaviour? That's a much more difficult
If you haven't got some ultimate powers, I mean, you can't knock them around anymore. You can't beat them with a cane.
But you don't improve people's behaviours by removing the sanctions available to schools. And let's face it, what sanctions are available to school? You can put a kid in detention, you can isolate them, you can give them extra work, jobs to do around the school, picking up litter, you can call the parents in. But once you've done that,
there's nothing
what else do you do? And the third point I should make, which I think is again a sign of real laziness on the part of the government, the single biggest cause of exclusion, I mean, some of these figures are appalling, 19,000 of them for physical assaults on teachers. And then we wonder why we've got a teacher recruitment and retention crisis. But the single biggest cause is persistent disruption. Now, surely the clue is in the title. It means schools have already tried everything else. And what the government is saying is just keep doing the same things which have failed. That's why we're excluding them.
I mean, this is the frustration, and I've mentioned on the show earlier, and this has been a sort of one of those debates, and I know it always goes through, whenever I see anybody who says, oh, we shouldn't exclude pupils, or they shouldn't be sent home, whenever I see any of that, I always check someone's biography. I want to know, what kind of school did you go to? And invariably, it's someone who went to a private school where that behaviour wasn't tolerated, the other parents wouldn't put up with it, and you've got kids coming from privilege, or they went to a grammar school where everyone was there and bright and ready to learn. They'd had their broccoli for dinner the night before and a good night's sleep. They haven't gone to a bog standard comp where there are kids who are routinely disruptive, who could be violent, who are not there to learn, who've got their phone on, not interested, kicking, shouting at the teacher. They've not been in those classrooms. They don't understand what it's like for the other pupils or the teacher, and they're full of sympathy. And we probably should be full of sympathy for the kids who are acting up, because they largely come from every
child deserves
lives.
an education. Every child deserves an education.
But it can't be a problem for the other 29.
Yeah, but not at the expense of the others. And I'd be having been the head of a comprehensive and of a grammar school, I'd be careful what you say about grammar schools, because they have no additional powers over discipline over their pupils than any school.
It's about the children who turn up to school and the parents' attitude.
Well, therein you touch another really important point. I mean, a percentage that is often not mentioned, kids only spend 17.5% of the year in school. 82.5% of a kid's life is outside of school. Now, I'm not saying schools don't have a role to play. They have a crucial role to play. But if you really want to improve behaviour, you have to consider what goes on outside of the school gates.
Yeah, look, you only have to look around and see what kids are getting away with their parents to wonder why. Of course, they don't expect to sit down and shut up and be told what to do by their teachers, or to be respectful, because they're not expected to do that at home. But this thing, what is the solution? Because realistically, a lot of these children, they need extra help. We need intervention from a very early age. We're getting kids who are being suspended at primary school. Imagine a kid being suspended from primary school for violence, and it's mind blowing. But we need very early intervention, and that costs money. That takes time.
Absolutely.
But realistically, some of these kids' home lives, they need to be out of their homes.
Yeah, they do. I mean, that is certainly true of many kids. I think there are a number of things. It isn't all negative. No school can or should be run purely on sanctions. No. Sanctions are crucially important, but I've always believed in a very happy, vibrant school. Extracurricular activities, sport, music, drama. Get the kids involved. Get the kids wanting to be in school. Pastoral care, counselling, mentoring. All of those things have a really positive role to play. But as you say, they cost money. And at the moment, many schools are reducing staff to balance the books. Yeah. That's where, the government should be looking. Can we provide additional staff? Can we provide additional facilities? I mean, in my second school in London, we had an isolation room. Yeah. That had to be staffed. Well, a small school might not have room for that.
Or the member of staff. Mr. Clark, it's been a fabulous talking to you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. You'd send your kid to one of his schools, wouldn't you? Absolutely. Former head Tim Clark there. Just some breaking news. Keir Starmer has just been speaking in Beijing. He said he is very proud to be the first Prime Minister to be here in 8 years. He still thinks it's historic, for the love of God. He also says he has followed through on his pledge to build a consistent, long-term, comprehensive and strategic relationship with China. Yeah, from your knees, mate, from your knees. Philip Ingram, reaction to either schools or what Keir Starmer, the nonsense that Keir Starmer has just said.
Keir Starmer went there for one reason, to get business. What he hasn't done in this statement is announced huge big business deals that he's done with China, and therefore he's coming back with nothing.
Genuinely, this is such an embarrassment. It really, really is. Delighted to say Ian Collins joins us right now. This whole trip...
So, do you know what? You had me this morning walking around my own kitchen going, yes, yes, yes. When you talk, because I just spotted this historic thing, and I just thought,
did my head in.
Sorry, has somebody redefined the word historic or something? What are they referring to? At what point?
But this is something that Downing Street put out, and basically we would have a go at Chinese journalists who are just spouting propaganda from the Chinese government. Downing Street said this is a historic trip because no one's been to China in checks notes. Is it 800 years? No. Is it 80 years? No. 8 years.
Yes.
It's 8 years.
If it was 3 centuries,
we've been busy.
I might be on board with it, but 8 years. It's not.
By the way, did anyone think of mentioning? Oh, by the way, thanks for the whole COVID thing, China. Did that come up at all?
Why did he not raise that?
When are we getting our reparations? He's big on reparations. When are we getting the reparations for that?
Hey, Xi, you messed up my country. That's what I want to hear him say.
Who was speaking then?
Well, that was kind of the Bronx Starmer. Do you not know his New York cousin?
I'd love to meet him.
Starmetti? You don't know him?